Welcome to the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce.
The Falmouth Chamber is dedicated to working on behalf of our members to make Falmouth a better place to live, work, and conduct business. We are committed to developing the economic, cultural, educational, and civic interests of our community and welcome the support from all organizations to achieve our combined goals. Whether you call Falmouth home, are a summer resident, or a visitor, we hope you take advantage of all that the Chamber has to offer.
Hosting services for fctv.org are provided by MegaNet Communications. MegaNet offers a wide array of internet services including Mega Backup Cloud Service, server co-location, T1, fiber, Metro Ethernet, as well as telephone services such as hosted PBX and digital voice. Their number one goal is to keep your communications network up and running and allow you to focus on growing your business. 877-634-2638 or meganet.net.
Good evening. Welcome to the Monday, November 20, 2017 Selectmen's Meeting open session. We will go directly to executive session with respect to General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, discuss resolution of all turbine litigation, and also with respect to General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6, discussion of short-term lease for Andrews Farm property. And as chair, I discussed that to not go into, state that to not go into executive session would jeopardize the town's position with respect to both of these issues, and also state that we will return to open session. All those by roll call.
Second.
Thank you. Moran, aye.
Jones, aye.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We're returning to the Monday, November 20th, 2017 Board of Selectmen's meeting. We've just come back from open session, and we now have the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With respect to recognition, Ms. English Braga typically does that. She's out sick today, and I think the recognition should really be in view of Thanksgiving. And for us all to keep in mind, notwithstanding the trying times in our own families, in our communities sometimes, in the world. We should all just take a moment, particularly this week with Thanksgiving coming up, to appreciate what's good and what we value, and really have patience with folks around us, and look to those who may be in need and try to do a little bit more. And then at home, really make sure those around you know you appreciate them. So that's going to be the recognition for today. Next, we have announcements. Is there anyone from the board who'd like to make an announcement?
Thank you.
Okay. And then we have public comment, which is a 2-minute opportunity for someone to comment on something that's not on the agenda. Come right up, please, young lady. Hi, Betsy.
Good evening. My name is Betsy Gladfelter. I have 2 announcements from the Conservation Commission. One is for the Coonamessett River Restoration Project, just to remind everybody that that's a construction zone. It's no trespassing, and please obey all signs and all flagging and fencing that's out there. The second announcement has to do with Beebe Woods and Peterson Farm. There's no hunting in either of those areas. Apparently there's been some issues recently, and the Conservation Commission took a vote last week to send a letter to Marine and Environmental Services to get those areas posted. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And just one further quick announcement. It is hunting season. If you're accustomed to jogging in the woods, for example, I know a lot of folks do, it really makes sense to get some orange and make sure you wear that, as plentiful as you're comfortable with. That's very helpful if you're running in the woods, so that there are no untoward conflicts.
And don't have a dog off leash.
And don't have a dog off leash. That's another good point. Next, we have the first license is to approve an application for a change of manager for an all alcoholic club license, the Woods Hole Golf Club at 130 Quisset Ave, Woods Hole. Is anyone here from the Woods Hole Golf Club? Okay.
I move approval.
Is there a second?
I'd second that.
Okay. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. The second item under licenses is to approve an application for a special one-day wine and malt liquor license for On the Water LLC Striper Fest, Marina Park, Saturday, September 29, 2018. They're getting this in early. It's a recurring great event. Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Second.
Do it every year.
Second?
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, we have to approve an application for 2 special one-day all-alcoholic liquor licenses for the Falmouth Theater Guild at Highfield Theater, 58 Highfield Drive, on Fridays, December 1st, 2017, and December 8th, 2017. Is anyone from the Theater Guild here?
Oh.
Hi.
Hello, my name is Brian Bukowski. Since our last application, I did some research, and there's a limit to 30 one-day liquor licenses. So these would be our last 2 for this calendar year. And it's for our Friday shows for the best Christmas pageant ever. And that's the title, but I guess it's also kind of a description.
Little foreboding.
Oh, yes, yes.
Well, thank you for the research. That was a question the board had asked before. We appreciate that. Any other questions? Is there a motion?
A motion to approve?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Great. Good luck with the event.
Happy Thanksgiving.
And you as
too.
well. Next, under administrative orders, we have a vote to approve an application to the Massachusetts Environmental Trust for funding to support the interpretive signs for the Coonamessett Greenway Heritage Trail.
We certainly have extensive information in a fantastic packet.
Yes,
It seems like a great application already being put forward, so I move approval of the, to approve the application.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy.
Next, we have vote to accept fiscal year 2017 Bulletproof Vest Grant in the amount of $2,592.57.
Move approval?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. And
Thank you for that donation. Next, we have approval of contract between Mass Fish and Game and the town of Falmouth to perform work for White's Landing project. Mr. Suso, you want to just tee that up?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. This is an ongoing relationship we have with the Mass Fish and Game on White's Landing, and as you know, we had some fits and starts getting that project wrapped up. I don't know if Greg Frazier is here. Jim Mclaughlin is here, our town engineer. Jim could make some comments about the coming to closure on the process.
Hi, Jim.
Good evening. So as Mr. Suso mentioned, Fish and Game had a little over $500,000 for the landing project at White's Landing. And the ramp, as you know, needed to be removed and rebuilt because they had wrong elevations out there. So essentially what's left in terms of funding after getting the ramp in is a little over $260,000. And we're going to use that money combined with Chapter 90 money that we have. It's about $185,000 for a total of nearly $440,000+ to install drainage along the roadway and repave the road, as well as perform some additional work up in the parking area to make it ADA accessible up there with some spaces, and then a sidewalk most of the way down the road. But that will also be ADA compliant. There's still some work to be done on the turnaround itself, but Jim Grady's forces went out this spring and got that in place so that the ramp was functional this year, and that just needs to be finished up probably again next spring. But the intent is to get as much work as we can this fall with the drainage and the pavement. Right now the road is in tough shape. Probably, I would estimate 50% of the pavement is broken up and gone at this point in time. So certainly a job that needs attention. And the structures are there on site, ready to go once we get the sign off from the board.
Well, very important project, and the rest will be finished in the spring, you imagine?
Yes, yep.
Sam?
Quick question, did they get the ramp problem squared away?
Yes, what happened is the engineering company that laid out the original construction benchmarks used the wrong elevation, and everything went in too high. So it was about a year ago this time, last year, that they removed the entire ramp and rebuilt it to the proper elevation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Next, we have to affirm the town manager's application to the state for regional wastewater consulting funding. Mr. Suso.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. You will recall that, about 18 months ago, maybe a little less, we had discussed the working consortium that I and my colleagues as managers in the 4 Upper Cape towns, that would be Bourne, Mashpee, Sandwich, and Falmouth, of course, began to look at collaborative opportunities, and one we identified was looking at wastewater, potentially collaborative options on wastewater for each of the 4 communities with the existing system at Joint Base Cape Cod. And we did apply and receive grant funding from the state for that, and that study is nearly completed. There is now an opportunity to apply for successor funding to continue that study and that analysis, which I feel would be very helpful to the town to continue moving forward, and my colleagues in the 4 communities concur as well. So asking for the board's affirmation of my transmitting a successor application to the state to allow that important process to continue.
Great work.
I would move approval of the affirmation.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have a vote to accept a donation to the Falmouth Police Department from Cape Cod Baptist Church in the amount of $5,000. We thank you for that. It's going to go to the efforts to combat the opioid epidemic in our community.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there a motion?
I vote we accept that donation and extend our appreciation.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we have a potential order to execute the Chamber of Commerce lease amendment. Mr. Gasparian is here, I know. Thanks for that. Is there anything you wanted to let the board know?
Yeah, come up
At
with
the
money.
podium? Just for those at home.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Board. Thank you for the opportunity. We really have valued our partnership with the town of Falmouth and with our member businesses, and I want to come tonight to answer any questions that you may have. As you know, we take our stewardship of that building very seriously. And most recently with the restoration of the outside due to the generosity of the CPC, the citizens of Falmouth, that was so well coordinated by Chardell Newton and as well as the Sheriff's Department helping to facilitate the painting of the outside. The building stands in really good shape, but looking forward, we want to execute the lease extension so that we could perhaps do a capital fund. There are some items that are going to be needed in that building, including the roof, boiler, et cetera, and as those times come up, the Chamber is committed to maintaining that building and want to be in a position where we're able to raise the funds appropriately so that we can continue to occupy that building, run the visitor center, and see to the needs of the community in the foreseeable future.
So the term is going to be for 25 years, and in lieu of rent, the Chamber is going to take care of all of the capital improvements such as roof replacement, foundation repairs, or any other upgrades or repairs that aren't within the ordinary care and maintenance.
That's correct. The lease extension would go out from 2020 to 2030, so our lease is not up until 2020, but we wanted to have a conversation about this and a discussion now so that we could go into a capital campaign. Some of the issues that were when the CPC did provide the money for the portico and the restoration of the front, there was a conservation restriction put on the building, and at the time we wanted to do the roof, but after consulting with Mr. Suso, it would have been onerous for the town to take that on because of the building, and we understood that. We thought that was a very thoughtful response, and working with the town, the Chamber is committed to putting the new roof on the building. However, we want to have an opportunity to go to our members, community, raise those funds, and of course that investment that we have will come back to us with use of the building.
Mr. Jones?
I guess just to clarify that in some ways it is a 25-year lease, but in some ways it isn't. It's a 25-year being dated back to 2005.
Okay.
In 2005, we had a 15-year lease.
Correct.
That we're now amending into a 25-year lease starting the year 2005.
Okay.
Because I don't think we're actually allowed to do leases that long for any kind of property. And so that's my only concern, is to have a document that says we have a 25-year lease when we're not really, I think, allowed to have a lease that length of time, but it isn't really acting as 25 years, it's acting only as 15 or 13 years. And I guess I just checked with Mr. Duffy to make sure that we're not actually signing a lease that's illegal if it's mentioning it as a 25-year lease, even though it's an amendment to a prior lease.
No, Mr. Jones, Frank Duffy, Town Council, the statute was amended recently to allow this term of lease.
For 20 years?
You can actually go 30.
Oh, could we? Okay.
For building, but not.
If I may, I think the example that's on everyone's mind is Andrew's Farm, and the issue there is that land has a different term than buildings. Am I correct?
That's where I was confused.
Right.
Okay, great.
Great.
Right.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, could I just comment?
Yes, sure,
How much we
please.
appreciate the excellent partnership, collaboration we have with Mr. Gasparian and all the members of the Falmouth Chamber. It's a relationship that we hold in high regard, and we appreciate the opportunity to expand upon it and build upon it further. So thank you, Mr. Gasparian, for all that you do, and members of the Chamber, and we look forward to that partnership continuing.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the partnership as well.
Just to add on to it, I think your greeting of visitors and providing information is just great, public relations for the town as well. All those visitors that come to town, that building kind of draws them down Academy Lane, and it's nice to know that your receptionists are in there ready to help them.
And what's interesting for these folks who may not know, we saw 17,000 people in that building last year, and we had people from 39 states, and almost 20 different countries that came to visit Falmouth and come to the visitor center, which was great. So a little fact there.
Great. Doug?
And I also appreciate that you're wise with your money, and having the sheriff's department there to help is very, very effective.
Thank you.
The only thing I would also want to add is what the Schedule 3A, the things that the chamber is willing to take responsibility for if they needed, that whether it's replacing the boiler, the air conditioning system, the roof, exterior, interior of the building, new entry doors, windows, the northwest corner, the handicap ramp, the wood rot, all of those if necessary, but they're willing to take on that responsibility. I also appreciate the Connect the Building to Open Cape, which they're not going to do as necessary, they're going to take care of getting that done.
That is correct. And that's a benefit not only to the town for that building, but for ourselves as well.
Right. I would move approval to execute the Chamber of Commerce lease amendment.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to skip ahead. The next item is the 7:30 hearing, so we're going to move to the request for a sign variance of Falmouth Tech Park, Technology Park Drive. I don't see anyone here to present that, but has everyone had a chance to take a look at that, and are there any questions by the board?
No, it seems like a reasonable request to me, and it's not out of character of that whole area, since it is a more or less industrial zone from there.
Recommended.
And recommended by the sign review committee. So with that, I would move approval.
The big point being it's two signs on the property. And just to acknowledge that we are allowing something that is against our sign policy, but I think with good argument.
Separated by 100 yards,
Right.
you know, so.
And also promoting the economic development for that area, which is the whole point of the park.
Right.
And the Falmouth EDIC.
So I make the motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next we have a request for a sign variance for Atria Woodbriar Park. Is anyone here for Atria?
Yes.
If you would come up, thank you, welcome. So what's this about? Would you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Pete Sherrill. I'm with Atria Senior Living. We currently have two freestanding signs on one lot. One sign is permitted, the other one is not, which is what we're seeking to get a variance on for having two freestanding signs on one lot. We are also replacing that existing sign with a new sign, which is a larger sign, so we're also asking a variance for the increase in size of that sign, going from 4x4 to a 4x6.
Are there any questions from the board?
Why do you need so much signage?
We have two separate buildings. We have one which is Woodbriar Place, and that is the new building which just got completed in 2013. And then we have the existing building which we just got through renovating this past September. So there's two buildings, and therefore there's a sign for each building. And there's some differences in between as far as the buildings go. The new building is assisted living totally, whereas the existing renovated building has both assisted living and also memory care.
And are there two different names for the two different buildings?
Yes, sir, they are.
That's why you need the two
Woodbriar
signs.
Place and Woodbriar Park.
I see. So it won't be called Atria anymore? Is that?
It will be called Atria
I
Woodbriar
see.
Place and Atria Woodbriar Park.
Okay. Well, I guess that's a reasonable explanation.
Well, I can tell you, having driven a Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority bus and gone into a facility where there were two different entrances, we frequently went to the wrong entrance and couldn't pick up passengers because
Right,
they were at the other entrance. So I think there's a reason for differentiating those two different facilities.
Okay, I guess
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I would move approval then.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good holiday.
You too.
Next, are the folks from Quistit Ave here?
Not that I see.
Okay, let's hold on that then. Is anyone here on Sandwich Road Fields? Mr. Sousa, did you expect anyone in Sandwich?
They were notified. I was expecting someone to attend.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Ron. Appreciate it. Hi.
Ron Braga. I know that Dave Jarvis is on his way. He said he was going to be here around 8 o'clock.
Okay, we'll hold that. Thank
So-
you. Is there anyone here on the constable appointment policy?
Madam Chair, I'm prepared to comment on that if I may.
Sure, please.
The board will recall that we had a grievance process
Thank you.
filed with the collective bargaining unit and a proposed settlement. And pursuant to that settlement are two actions for the board to consider. The first, which would amend your constable appointment policy, and the second would be applying it to 4 of our employees in the Department of Marine and Environmental Services. We worked out this proposal with Town Council Frank Duffy and with the union as well, and I would recommend that, consistent with the settlement which has been dealt with, that the board consider these two actions. The first, to amend what I've handed you, your existing policy for constable appointment as of June 28th, 2010, and then to take the 2 additional steps, appointing the 4 employees to give them that authority, which will bring the confusion and the issues, the challenges raised through this process to closure.
So is everything in the bold here part of the motion? Is that what you're
Correct.
suggesting?
Yes.
And this would not eliminate any current constables we have or force us to reduce appointment of other constables, is that correct?
Correct. This would have no impact on your other constables, because these appointments would be for the work necessary to undertake their job descriptions, and would not apply to any civil actions whatsoever, which the other constables are involved in.
Any other questions?
The other constables, I think we have a policy concerning their residency.
Correct.
Do these appointments also need to be following that policy? I guess, again, it's just a policy. It is not a legal requirement, but do we need to be concerned about whether we're being consistent in having that policy apply to both these constables and to our other constables?
My understanding is, because of the fact that this particularly calls out the appointment of existing municipal employees, that as long as the individuals to whom it applies are employees, municipal employees, that is the standard that must be met.
Okay.
I know Town Council could
That would be
clarify
covered
if he
within it.
sees it differently.
Anyone else?
Well, I would move to amend the Selectmen's Constable Appointment Policy of June 28th, 2010 by adding the following. Section 11, the Board of Selectmen reserves the right and authority to appoint municipal employees as constables for specific purposes and to determine the terms, conditions, and limits of their appointments.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And second motion is, in accordance with the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 91A, and Section C3-6A, subsection 5 of the Falmouth Home Rule Charter, the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Falmouth hereby appoints Greg Frazier, Chuck Martinson, Phil Lang, and Dan Donahue, officers of the Department of Marine and Environmental Service, as constables with the authority to serve criminal process with attendant power of arrest to enforce applicable sections of Chapters 91 and 131 of the Massachusetts General Laws. Provided, however, that this appointment shall remain in force and in effect as long as the appointee remains an officer of the Department of Marine and Environmental Service, or it is sooner revoked and does not authorize service of civil process. In accordance with the provisions of Section C3-6A5 of the Falmouth Home Rule
Pardon me,
Charter.
Mr. Selectman, I'm wondering if this should be 2 separate motions.
Okay,
I think Town Council's saying it should be.
all right, so I'll stop at civil process.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Step 2.
Thank you.
In accordance with the provisions of Section C3-6A5 of the Falmouth Home Rule Charter, the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Falmouth hereby appoints Greg Frazier, Chuck Martinson, Phil Lang, and Don Donahue, officers of the Department of Marine and Environmental Service, as agents of the Falmouth Conservation Commission, with authority to enforce Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Mass General Laws, the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw and Regulations, and orders of the Conservation Commission. provided, however, that this appointment shall remain in force and effect as long as the appointee remains an officer of the Department of Marine and Environmental Service, or it is sooner revoked.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, members of the board and Selectman Jones.
And that goes to 7:30.
Right. Okay, next we'll call the tax classification hearing. I'll read the notice. In accordance with the requirements of Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 56, Falmouth Board of Selectmen will hold a fiscal 2018 property tax classification hearing Monday, November 20, 2017, at 7:30 p.m. in the Selectmen's Meeting Room of Town Hall, 59 Town Hall Square, Falmouth, Mass. Purpose of the public hearing is to consider the percentages of the fiscal year 2018 tax levy to be borne by each class of taxable real and personal property. All persons interested in the determination may appear and be heard at the time and place stated above, and that was published in the Enterprise on Friday, November 10, 2017. Is there anyone here who would like to be heard other than Ms. Favuli? Thank you.
I just want to object. I think this happened way too recently. My time is completely lost because I just feel like we did this about 2 months ago. But
it sure flies. Ms. Favuli, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members, Mr. Suso and Mr. Johnson-Staub, and I will have to agree, I think I was here last week. I sent via email the forms that I'll be reviewing with you. If you have any questions, please say so. We've had a very active year in the assessor's office. I have to thank my staff who have worked very hard to get us to this point. We're actually ahead of schedule than in prior years, so we can thank the staff for working hard on that. Each year at this classification hearing, the Board of Selectmen are asked to make 4 choices relating to the manner in which property is taxed in the town of Falmouth. We have the choices as follows. We have a choice of a split tax rate. The Selectmen may choose to increase the share of taxes paid by commercial, industrial, real estate, and personal property up to 150% of their unadjusted share. The increase would result in a decrease in residential properties. In the case of the Falmouth for this fiscal year, an increase reduces residential rate by 38 cents while increasing the commercial, industrial, and personal property rate by $4.30. A commercial, industrial, and personal property assessment at $492,000 would pay $2,120 more at the higher rate. Residential property at $492 would pay $187 less. The Department of Revenue suggests 20 to 25% of our property be commercial, industrial, and personal property. We are only at 8.2%. So it would be a strong shift towards commercial, industrial property, which would be carrying the load of the split tax rate. We also have an opportunity of a small business exemption. In order to buffer the impact of the split tax rate, if we would choose that, we are allowed to give an exemption to small business owners with 10 or fewer employees. There are estimated 400 businesses that would get the exemption. They would have 10 or fewer employees. And again, that exemption would cause the tax rate to raise as we shift the burden back to the commercial industrial property. Our next opportunity would be an open space discount. We can offer an open space discount of 75% for land identified by the Board of Assessors as open space. We currently assess open space at a very, very low rate, lower than what the discount would allow. And our fourth opportunity would be a residential exemption, which we could offer up to 20% of the average residential property tax. The exemption is funded by an increase in residential tax rate, which results in lower taxes for some owners for occupied homes and shifting the higher tax rate to vacant land, non-qualifying residential dwellings, owner-occupied homes, and commercial properties, industrial, and personal property. So all of our choices that we have for split tax rate would be shifting everything from the residential to the industrial class and the personal property. If in the event we chose any of these splits, we would take a tax rate of $8.60 for residential owner-occupied homes, and we would shift the commercial, industrial, and personal property tax rate to $12.90 per thousand. So it would be a sizable adjustment, and I think our commercial property owners are already paying a secondary tax because most of them are paying a personal property tax on their own businesses, so they would be hit with 2 taxes at $12.90 versus the $8.60. Historically, the town has voted to stay with a single tax rate. So at this point in time, what the board needs to decide are the split tax rate, the residential exemption, the small business exemption, and the open space exemption. Thank you. The Board of Assessors have recommended that the board vote to establish a single tax rate. That's their recommendation, and it's entirely up to the board what you choose.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
Can you give us any indication of what the dollar tax rate is for local, or other towns around us? Any idea?
Falmouth has one of the lowest rates.
That's what I thought.
Considerably lower.
I wasn't sure if it was like 50, are we 50% of local towns? Or
No,
$2 or $3
we're
below?
not. Barnstable has a split tax rate, and I believe their split rate is $16.80 per thousand and $12.60, I believe it is. And Sandwich has a much higher tax rate also.
Okay, great. So
Yeah,
that
which is
means
like
I'm very happy to
14%.
move the town of Falmouth continues to tax all classes at the same rate by adopting a factor of 1, and to reject the residential, commercial, and open space exemption.
Is there a second before discussion?
Second.
And does anyone have discussion?
Yeah, I do have. Trish, can you tell us what percentage of the property owners in Falmouth are non-resident owners?
Approximately, to the best of our knowledge, approximately 8,000.
Which is a what percentage?
We have 18,000 single-family homes and 4,000 condominiums.
Okay.
Cape Cod Commission just did a study and said it was approximately 40% Cape-wide.
Cape-wide. I was
Cape-wide.
talking about specifically Falmouth.
We're pretty close to that when you,
Okay.
when you take into consideration. It's what we know, the people that identify to us that are second homes, basically by their mailing address.
Right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks for a great
Okay.
presentation.
Just need signatures.
Great. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Trish.
Mr. Suso, can the review of Amendment A to the Atlantic Herring Fishery Management Plan be done within 5 minutes? I think it can.
I think it could be.
I forwarded an email which might be quicker found by you.
Also, Mr. Jarvis
That's the
is here.
first.
Okay.
No surprise.
You got it there, Doug? Did you want me to
Sure,
walk through this,
go ahead.
Madam Chair?
Sure.
The information provided through Madam Chair Sue Moran, there's a concern about commercial fishing vessels known as midwater trawlers and their harmful impact on river herring. Next month, the New England Fishery Management Council, which is the regional council mandated by federal law to conserve and manage ocean fisheries, will consider implementing a buffer zone around Cape Cod. This zone would require that the commercial trawlers that now fish as close as 3 miles from Cape shores would be required to move farther offshore. Now these trawlers, when they are fishing for ocean herring, scoop up millions of pounds of river herring unintentionally. The river herring become collateral damage. The Commonwealth and Cape communities have worked hard to protect river herring, but these trawlers have a devastating impact. By forcing the trawlers offshore, river herring, which are a critical part of the marine food chain, and all the larger fish who need river herring in their diet, will thrive closer to shore. This is critical for small boat fishing operations and recreational fishing. A number of Cape municipalities are also urging the New England Fishery Management Council to enact a buffer zone. Those communities being Brewster, Provincetown, Harwich, Orleans, Chatham, Wellfleet, Mashpee, Eastham, the CNI Selectmen and Councilors Association, that'd be Cape and Island Selectmen, County Commissioners, and the County Assembly of Delegates. And that is what is brought to the board for your consideration.
Which would be to, for the town manager to sign a letter stating the board's position in line with that request.
Absolutely.
Any questions, Sam?
Well, I just want to say that this issue's come up almost every other month at the Cape Cod Selectmen and Councilors Association meeting. You know, the problem is that there's an unfairness as the trawlers come down past the Cape. They actually come to within 3 miles of our coast. When they're up in Maine, they have to stay 12 miles off. When they go down past Connecticut and New York, they have to stay 12 miles. So it's just that one area across the Outer Cape and around the islands where they are allowed to come this close to the shore. We're spending a significant amount of money trying to restore some of our rivers. Those herring may not even have a chance to get back to those rivers, and I think that this is an opportunity for us to weigh in on this. I know that the fishermen of the islands have come and really begged us to please help them out, because they see that, you know, the fishing that they're trying to conduct for profit is being depleted by the lack of feeder fish for those generally, you know, carnivorous fish that feed on those herring. So I think for both reasons, I think we should be supporting this. So I would move that we send that letter.
Does the letter specify a distance, or it just encourages action?
It encourages the action, but the actual distance is yet to be decided.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, next we'll go to our 7:40 hearing. There's an application for transfer of a seasonal all-alcoholic common victualler license, entertainment license, and Sunday entertainment license for H&S Restaurant Group, Inc., DBA Shuckers at 91 Water Street, Woods Hole. And the license per se is as follows. It's a liquor license hearing. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138 of General Laws as amended that H&S Restaurant Group, Inc., DBA Shuckers, has applied for a transfer of ownership of a seasonal all-alcoholic common victualler license located at 91A Water Street, Woods Hole, Mass. The application has also been made for an entertainment license and a Sunday entertainment license. A hearing will be held at Selectmen's Meeting Room, Falmouth Town Hall, on Monday, November 20 at 7:40 p.m. on the above application. Publication date, Friday, November 10, 2017, in the Falmouth Enterprise. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Madam Chairman. My name is Michael Mahoney. I represent H&S Restaurant Group, Inc. With me today are the principals of H&S Restaurant Group, Inc., Mr. Barry Hannon and Lily Strout. It's my pleasure to be here tonight, having summered in Falmouth for most of my life. I've represented Mr. Hannon throughout his experience as a restaurant owner in the city of Boston. He's the current owner of the Dogwood Cafe in Jamaica Plain. He's owned that for 22 years. He's never, ever had a violation there. Lily Strout used to work for him at The Vault, which is another restaurant that he owned in Boston, and she previously worked at Shuckers Restaurant for 5 years. While she was at The Vault, she was a manager part-time and in charge of large groups and parties. Mr. Hannon and Ms. Strout have significant restaurant experience, and they're both tips trained. Ms. Strout, as I understand it, is a very good friend of the hopefully soon-to-be former owners, the Murphy family, who, pursuant to our agreement to purchase this business, we have agreed to keep them on as consultants. There'll be absolutely no change in the operation of the restaurant. There'll be no change in the menu. It's just going to exist exactly how it has for the past 36 years, except that Mr. Hannon's going to own it and Ms. Strout is going to own it. My understanding is that Ms. Strout has long ties to the community, and we're here to answer any questions that you may have of us.
Well, the no change, I'm sure, a great sigh of relief just came over the town of Falmouth, because it's, of course, a very important spot for many different reasons for a lot of people. Are there any questions from members of the board?
No.
Is there anyone here?
I just have one quick
Doug?
question.
Please.
I think, just to confirm that Lillian Strout will be the signed manager?
Yes, she will be.
Okay. And understands, of course, as with other organizations, that therefore she is the one responsible for all adherence to liquor policies and rules.
Is there anyone here who'd like to speak in favor of this application? Please, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of Ms. Strout as well as Mr. Hannon. This is a very emotional time for the Murphys.
Kevin, we know who you are, but...
Kevin Murphy, owner of Shuckers Precinct 5. It's an emotional time, but with every good thing comes an end. And the part of the ending here is not an ending. Lily has been part of the Shuckers family, as we call it. She worked for us for 5 years. Her original job there was a hostess. She became a waitress, became a bartender, moved on to work for Mr. Hannon in Boston, who we actually probably have known longer than Lily. My daughter worked for Mr. Hannon when he was in Boston, so we know the type of operators they are. And the good part for us is that we'll be able to continue to help them as they move forward, at least in the next 3 years. Probably more so my wife than myself, but we appreciate the idea and the ideal that things won't change there, that we've worked 36 years to build up a legacy, and we hope that that legacy will continue on. Both of them have the mentality that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And in their eyes and in our eyes, it would be a perfect fit, not only for us, but for the community. So I would wholeheartedly endorse both Barry Hannon and Lily Strout on behalf of my wife and I. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Is there anyone here that would speak against this application? Okay, back to the board, then
Is this when we actually close? Is that kind of a hearing?
we're going to close the hearing.
I'll move we close the hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Good luck with the new.
So I would move in support of the application. I would request that the two new managers and owners might want to stick around for what's going to happen at 7:50. But I think it might be informative for them to hear about the liquor license violation hearing that we'll be holding for another establishment. I think that could be useful.
Thank you.
So I would move the approval of the application for transfer of the all alcohol common victual license.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations.
Hey.
Could I take a 3-minute recess at this point?
Yes. We'll stand in recess for 3 minutes. Calling the meeting back to order. Next on the agenda, we have a liquor license violation hearing for Falmouth Pier 37 Boathouse LLC at 88 Scranton Ave, Falmouth. And the hearing notice reads as follows. I want to make sure I have the right one. Okay. This hearing is being conducted in accordance with the provision of General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 64, which requires that the Board of Selectmen investigate complaints regarding liquor licenses with the witnesses under oath. In order to comply with this statute, all persons intending to testify at this hearing shall now stand. Is there anyone else intending to testify with respect to the hearing on the Pier 37 Boathouse LLC? Please remain standing and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Will the Secretary please note in the record that all persons intending to testify at the hearing stood and took an oath prior to testimony? And when you do start testifying, could you please just announce your name for the Secretary, and you may be seated. Thank you. Chief, do you want to start us off, please?
Good evening. Edward Dunn, Chief of Police. Madam Chair, on the 28th of August, I had sent you and the board a notice that the Falmouth Police Department, I had received a letter from Captain Jeffrey Smith listing that from May 21st, 2017 through August 20th, 2017, that the Falmouth Police Department had responded to the Boathouse at least 11 incidents over that time period. 6 of those incidents involve fighting, and 5 are due to the consumption of alcohol, where patrol either found an individual passed out or individuals acting belligerent manner, otherwise violating the liquor laws. I sent this to the board because the amount of time it has taken for the Falmouth Police Department and the Falmouth Fire Department. With me tonight, I have Sergeant Michael Semino, who works the midnight shift, and he can just enlighten you on some of the responses that we've had there, and then I can go over the incidents with you if you wish.
Thank you, officer. Please.
Michael Semino, Sergeant and Midnight Shift Supervisor for the Falmouth Police Department. Weekends are usually the high point of our business over there. On any given weekend, I mean, on top of the incidents that have happened, like the violent incidents that have happened, we're dealing with a lot of kind of like small fires, you'd say, from like about 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the morning. It takes a good hour to clear that area of town out. That area of Scranton Ave is a corridor between, you know, the bar, restaurant, and like 7-Eleven. Say there's a foot traffic back and forth in that area. We're dealing with anything from belligerent, loud groups roaming the area, fighting, or fights about to start, and other similar behavior. It's become pretty daunting. It's usually a supervisor and 2 or 3 officers from the shift that are dedicated to that area in that, you know, that hour time. You know, it's kind of an at-risk age group we're dealing with, college age group. They're obviously binge drinking. They're coming out of there. Their ability to reason is out the door. It's gone. And we're kind of catching the tail end of that. They're kind of still in the party mode when they exit the building. You tell people repeatedly to keep it down, you know, stay out of the roadway. And there's vehicles coming in and out. There's people wandering in and out of the road. You have to tell people repeatedly to get out of the road. They kind of look at you with a blank stare a lot of times. You know, some people that need further direction, we give it to them, and you know, other people get the gist. I'd say a lot of people are getting rides these days between the cabs, Lyft, Uber, and so forth. That I applaud them for, but it's creating an hour of people just milling about. You have different crowds, different groups. A wrong look, a bump could result in you disrespecting me, and all of a sudden there's a fight. We're there, we're on the road, and people are still attempting to fight right in front of us. So, I mean, I literally, one night, there was 2 guys toe-to-toe, and I drove my car, safely towards them with the lights on and a siren blaring to try to separate them. They didn't budge. They were still toe-to-toe, eye-to-eye. I had to get out of my car and literally separate them physically. Like I said, the ability to reason is kind of shot at that point. Prime example. So, I mean, that's a regular weekend. On a holiday weekend or a special event weekend, 4th of July, or a road race weekend, you have more people in that area, more people trying to get into the bar, and they're doing a great job of keeping lines, one in, one out, that type of thing. They've been doing a real good job at that. The on-site manager, Mr. Mclaughlin, he's always there. He's always there if we need him. If we have a concern, he's on site. He's always on site, which is a good thing. But just, you know, it's a public safety issue. I mean, we're worried on a nightly basis when we're over there. I mean, someone's going to get hurt. And I'm not trying to take, you know, money out of anybody's pocket or ruin anybody's livelihood, but it definitely is a public safety issue between, you know, at that closing time. There's just a lot of people, and there's other, you know, establishments, we'll go there, but other establishments in the area, everybody's letting out at the same time. You're talking about 400 people between 1 and 2, you know, finding a place to go. And not saying that, you know, people don't get in their car intoxicated, but I mean, we can't check everybody that gets in a vehicle. But I'm sure that there is some impaired driving going on too, which if we get it, we get it. If we find it, we'll handle it. But I'm sure that it's just so much foot traffic, so much vehicle traffic that it's just a recipe for disaster. Dim lighting, it's, kind of like a perfect storm, and people have already been hurt, and we don't want to see anybody get, hurt more seriously.
Thank you. Questions from the board for the officers? Doug?
How does this compare to other establishments? I mean, we do have other places that do close at 1 or 2 o'clock that have neighboring. Is this different there than any place else?
There's some similar issues, at other places, but this, I'd like to say they're a popular place, and they do cater to that college-age crowd who, you can tell they probably pre-drink, they probably drink before they get to the bar, they're drinking at the bar, they probably drink when they leave the bar. It's just a tough thing to crack. We do have, certain problems at different establishments, but this kind of rises to the top.
Okay. And the other chief, I have this with the fire chief. Last year, or 2 years ago, we had significant issues with overcrowding, and we had a number of different violations of it then. Have we had any safety checks on numbers this year?
Yes, and they complied with the numbers.
They certainly, last time when we had the numbers issue, they took that on very seriously, made some real changes, and controlled it pretty well last year. I just want to make
their
sure.
occupancy went up, and in another place in the area, their occupancy went up. So, you're talking, like I said, you're talking on any given, average week and night, upwards. It could be between the two places, it could be, 400, 450 people.
That's one of the things they did, is they increased the occupancy by making adjustments in the building.
Correct.
As opposed to just keep the occupancy at that level. Okay.
Questions? Doug? Chief?
Just want to go over just the incidents real quick.
Please.
Not all the details, but just give you an idea of what we're responding to over there.
Thank you.
May 21st, we had an unwanted guest. Arrest was made. June 25th, a disturbance, disorderly report. July 2nd, an assault and battery. July 16th, assault and battery. July 22nd, a disturbance. We had a suspicious person on July 29th. July 29th also, we had an assault and battery. There was an arrest made. July 29th, we had another disturbance and an arrest was made. August 5th, that was just an area check. Must have been the cruisers that were over there, probably a bar when the bar was letting out. And then on August 20th, we had another assault and battery where an arrest was made. And one of those arrests, one of those assault and batteries, the individual was hurt so bad they had to be med-flighted to Boston. So those are the type of calls that the shift's responding to. And as Sergeant Semino said, we respond to all the establishments in town for one time or another, but the amount of time that we're spending responding to the Boathouse far superior over the other establishments. And at any one time, as he said, I have a shift supervisor, a lieutenant, and a sergeant, and anywhere from 4 to 5 vehicles there. Some nights we're only running 5 vehicles. So if they're all tied up at their one establishment, I can't tell you what the rest of the town is.
A question on the date, because town council has asked us to make a finding by date. So I caught pretty much everything except for June 25th.
June 25th. That was the disturbance/disorderly incident.
Thank you. Doug, you had a question?
I was just going to say, when I was looking at the police reports, it looked like most of them were calls made by the manager asking for help. So, he seems like he's trying to manage things correctly. It's just maybe just too much volume of intoxicated people that gets out of control. Do you have ideas or suggestions? Maybe they need to tone down the music, make it less of a...
I've never run a bar, so
Yeah, right.
I don't know what they have to do, but they are as with any business, they are responsible for their guests. So I don't know what they need to do as far as, a lot of it is alcohol fueled. There's no doubt, as the sergeant says, when you have cruisers in the parking lot and people are looking at the police officers and they still want to fight.
They're out there.
They're out there.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak with respect to the violations? Okay, is there anyone here who wants to speak in favor of the business? Please. Yes, please, sir. For the folks at home, the microphone goes to the FCTV. We, of course, can hear you, but would you please introduce yourself when you step up?
My name's Brian McLaughlin. I own the property. My son is the manager of the Boathouse. We've taken over about 8 years ago. We expanded the deck. As you know, we've expanded the occupancy, all on one level. We have families there all day, Saturdays, Sundays. We work really diligently at making sure everybody's safe. In the evening, it does turn into a college kids from the ages of 23 to 35, 50, 60. There's a lot of people there that are later. The music is, we try to keep the music at a, obviously classic rock is good. Most of the kids really like that. There's no question that we want to be as safe, and we can increase our lighting. We do have great security within the building. We've had a few pushing incidents. Outside in the parking lot, our staff that are security will go out and tell kids to move along and things like that. The outside lighting can be increased. We can put more cameras, which we'd be more than happy to do. You know, we hire local people. We also run the marina, so we have the boats, and we've upscaled that considerably. So I certainly know it's an issue. We would be more than happy to hire, if the opportunity presents itself, local police on the evenings of, you know, you have the road race. I mean, that's crazy. That brings in tons of people in town, and they all want to go to the Boathouse, so they want to go out and have a few drinks and have some fun. So, you know, we'd be more than happy to hire local police if the opportunity is available to be in the parking lot, and we'd pay them separately. So, I mean, we're certainly here to take any suggestion or do whatever the board would like to see happen, other than shut it down.
Questions? Sam?
What kind of, what do you use to make sure you're not over-intoxicating your patrons?
Well, everyone is tipsy trained.
But what are the things you look for, basically cut somebody off?
They look for slurred speech. They look for typical examples. One of the good things, it's so busy that people can't, it's hard to get to the bar because there's 4 or 5 people waiting in line. So that's kind of almost a good thing, if you will. We have 3 bartenders, we have 2 bars, we have 3 in each one, and they're busy, you know, pouring beers and things like that. But they're monitoring people. We have a system where we screen the licenses. So we bought 2 machines, and it screens them. It'll tell you if it's a fraudulent license. We've probably confiscated something like, I don't know, 120 licenses over the summer. We have the opportunity to give those to the police department if they want them. We take them away from people and tell the people they're not allowed in. I think the fact is some people do. They're kids. I mean, some of them are kids and some of them are adults, and it's cheaper to have a nip in the car than it is to buy a $8 drink in our place. So some people come in and maybe have a drink before they come in. But they all tip certified, everyone that works there. We do the best we can.
I have 3 suggestions. You certainly could conduct breathalyzers before they came in to test whether their blood alcohol is at a level that's concerning. You could have a drink limit and come up with a system that says, nope, you're allowed to buy 2 drinks and no more than that. Or you could voluntarily say, while our occupancy gives us up to 450 people, we're going to cut it off at 300, 250. Profits will go down on all 3, but that would create a safer establishment.
A lot of times the occupancy we keep below the maximum, oftentimes, because we want a safety factor of 50 or 60 or 10 or 15%. I believe the occupancy is somewhere around 500. I'm not sure.
That's too many. I mean, I guess we made a mistake by allowing that. I mean, this is where the problem arose, is the solution we had 2 or 3 years ago is the occupancy was being violated. You rebuilt the building to have a higher occupancy, and now we have a huge problem.
The occupancy.
This isn't a conversation one at a time.
I actually think it's something we should probably look at, and we go back to the planning board and say, we made a mistake by allowing a place like that, in that area, to have 500 people legally in it. I'm sorry that we made that decision. It was a huge mistake. And I think it's something we need to revisit, and maybe as part of the liquor license, can reconsider what is the occupancy that we think is appropriate. For the gentleman to say 500 is what it is, and we come close to 450, wow, 450 in that building, on that piece of property, that's...
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the, with respect to the violations? I'm sorry, I lost track for a second. Is there anyone here in the audience who's been sworn in that would like to speak with respect to this license? Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Next.
My name's Connor McLaughlin. I'm the general manager of the Boathouse, and I'm on premises every day. I just wanted to share with you, if I could, letters from my security as well as my lighting, my electrician, that I've already contracted them for next year.
I'll take them. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Sousa, will you make this part of the file?
Certainly.
We recognize there's a lighting issue in the parking lot, and we're working diligently to try to figure out how we can better provide security cameras and lighting in the parking lot. With the instances that have happened at the Boathouse, 9 out of 10 of them have been in the parking lot, and that's where we're finding the difficulty in controlling. The issues have not occurred, to the best of my knowledge, within the building, mostly.
In other words, no over-serving?
The issues of intolerant kids not conducting themselves appropriately, fighting, having issues, we remove them from the building and they sit in the parking lot for 45 minutes. Our security asked them politely to leave 100 times. They do not listen to authority. And we, I've been forced to call the police on several occasions to have individuals removed that were not that they weren't responsive from a coherence standpoint, but they refused to comply with order, with law.
But it started in the building. You've asked them to leave because of their behavior.
We asked them to leave. They stepped onto the parking lot and they said, "We're not stepping off of this parking lot." And at that point, it's very difficult, to get them to leave the parking lot without involving an authoritative figure. Some people need repercussion there. Some people need to know that it's going to affect them more than just the night, that the officer, may fear them of long-term, problems. So, we understand there's an issue, and I'll do everything in my power to fix that issue. And the capacity is 476, just so you're aware.
Questions for Mr. McLaughlin?
Do you have any other ideas about how to mitigate the volume of people? Would you consider reducing the volume?
We truly respect and support the local police, and we love the opportunity to work with them and to formulate better opportunities to work together. We know that them being around is a huge deterrent to kids acting a certain way. We're very proud of what we've built, and we know that there are things that we have to do to further protect the patrons and protect ourselves. And in fact, all the boats in the property around us, there's millions of dollars of boats along the pier there that we need to make sure that are, well protected as well. And some of that isn't going to come without the help of law enforcement. And we'd be happy to do whatever it takes to work with them.
Doug?
The point, I guess, I just want to keep pushing, these kids, these adults, whoever this is, it's happening because they're drunk. You're providing the alcohol to them at a level that's more than is appropriate for them to be able to behave in an appropriate way. And I'm not hearing either from your father or from you taking any responsibility for the problem starting in the boathouse with these people being served alcohol beyond what they should be served. And that concerns me. There is no responsibility taken by your organization for their behavior. You're saying we need more lights, we need more police, we need more cameras. That's not your organization taking responsibility and taking action.
We take responsibility for everything we've done, and we will
Are you
do our
taking
best.
responsibility for over-serving these people?
We will do our best to retrain all employees and make sure that everyone is tip certified, but we will again readdress the situation and set some kind of a limit.
See, I don't think tip certification actually is isn't enough. I think actually some real serious action needs to take. And what about a 2-drink minimum, maximum? That you're swiping the card and say, you only get 2 drinks in our place.
If I might, in terms of process, I think what we'll do is the board might discuss some of those repercussions, which I think are, well worth considering. In terms of moving the hearing, what I'd like to do, now the chief read the dates and all the major violations. Is there any evidence that you'd like to present now which would suggest that those incidents did not occur?
I'm not going to.
All right, and so as requested by town council with respect to the board, the first thing is that the board is asked to determine whether the alleged violations are agreed to have occurred on those dates before we discuss any sort of penalty with respect to the license. So are there any more questions for Mr. Mclaughlin? Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on behalf of Mr. Clarkson? Welcome. Could you announce yourself to the audience?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Troy Clarkson. I was duly sworn in. I live at 174 Queen Street. In full disclosure, before I offer my remarks, I do know the Mclaughlin family, and I serve on a nonprofit board with Brian Mclaughlin. But I'm here tonight as a resident of the area and as someone who lives directly across from the Boathouse, and have lived there for the last 2 summers. And at no time during my residency there has there ever been an incident at the Boathouse that's caused any discomfort for my wife and I. I think the fact that typically in these situations, if there are significant concerns at an establishment, you hear from the neighborhood. And I believe as the only person to be sworn in, and I'm here speaking in support because they run, I think, a very good operation. Years ago, I think Selectman Jones is correct. There were some significant issues. And I think what the Mclaughlin family did was take back management of the property and made some significant improvements so that this establishment is a real benefit to the neighborhood. I don't doubt or minimize in any way the incidents that have occurred, but would suggest, as someone who sat on a licensing board for 12 years and has worked as a staff representative, as a public administrator on dozens of hearings after that, what I always look at is to see if there is a willing business owner to make improvements, because I think the goal of a licensing hearing is to remedy a situation, to be constructive rather than punitive. And what I just heard from the owners is that they are contrite and willing to do what they need to do to make improvements. I heard suggestions for lighting improvements, for additional security, for partnering with the police department to provide paid details. And so I just suggest, I think, as a subject matter professional, that what we have here, it appears, is a license holder who's willing to make improvements to make things better. And I believe that's always the goal of a hearing of this nature. So I just, I stand here in support of the establishment and the work that they've done to improve the neighborhood, and as a neighbor who thinks that they are a benefit to the neighborhood.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Clarkson? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Duffy, if you could, for a moment, in terms of process, I know that you suggested earlier that we make a determination by date. Is that still the best process?
Frank Duffy, Town Council. I had suggested that the board basically divide the hearing into 2 parts. The first, in which you make a finding that the events as represented in the reports are substantiated and that they're a violation of the regulations, and then you go on as a separate part to discuss what you're going to do about it. I would, just a couple of comments. One, I think the comment was made that some letters, I believe, that were presented by Mr. Connor would be admitted into the record. You should do the same thing with the chief's reports, incident reports.
Thank you.
So what you're basically saying here is that the board makes a finding that based upon reports filed by the Falmouth Police Department, incidents at the Boathouse occurring on May 21st, June 10th, June 25th, July 2nd, July 16th, July 22, July 29, July 29, July 29, that's 3 events on July 29, August 5th and August 20 were substantiated by the testimony of the police chief and Sergeant Simino, and were not contradicted by the owner of the establishment, and that these events are violations of the Falmouth alcoholic regulations promulgated by the board, and that the manager shall at all times maintain order and decorum on the premises and the immediate surrounding area.
And so the finding of the violation would be the first
Would be
finding.
exactly what you just said.
Right, and is there someone?
Adopt what I said.
Okay, so.
I would move that that be our finding.
Is there
You're
a second?
seconding
Is
that.
there discussion on that motion? Whether the finding is violations on those dates?
Just one question about the dates. Are they majority weekends? Has there been any, we have to research that, I guess?
For the finding,
I think you could-
for our discussions to what we do, that may be more relevant for that, but
Okay.
actually, whether these things occurred and they haven't been contradicted.
I see, okay.
All right, so we'll take a vote now that we've had the motion and the second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Also, Mr. Sousa, would you take into the record the reports of the officers, the summary, the letters, everything that was submitted?
Certainly.
Thank you. And Mr. Duffy, so with the bifurcation, and I'm thinking similar to what we did with the Cape Verdean Club, we continued the hearing with respect to the results of what the board would suggest for the violation to a second day. Is that what you're
Well, if you would,
suggesting?
it's up to you, of course. If you would like to have some time to consider what your options are, perhaps have me outline them. You also have a policy, which you have adopted previously on first, second, third, fourth, and subsequent violations, which would probably be worthy to review. I remind you, it is only a policy, it's not hard law. But it's up to you folks. You could certainly do that if you want.
And also, whether punishments would run concurrently?
That can be reviewed too, yes.
So you would need time to review that?
Yeah, that'd be fine. I'd do that for you.
Okay, so, and I also note that with respect to the other fairly complicated and serious, one of the serious liquor license hearings we had with the Cape Verdean Club, we did split the hearings so that the chief of police could be consulted. Is that something the board would like to consider here? Which would be, what I'm asking is, as we did with the Cape Verdean Club, we split sort of the repercussion stage so that we were able to consult with council, get recommendations on what could be handled concurrently, separate days, violations, and also whether the liquor license holder will want to speak with the chief of police. The reason I mention that is because police details have been mentioned as part of this proposal or what may be before the board.
Right.
So is there any thought from the board about wanting to continue this to another date?
We certainly do have the flexibility because this is a seasonal license. They are not open right now and will not be opening until May at some point at the earliest.
Sam?
Well, I think that they also have to have the opportunity to retain counsel for themselves to go through this process, so this would give them that opportunity. So I would be in favor of continuing it to a specific date. I'm certainly concerned about the safety, the lack of safety that's created by their operation. So I think it's important that we find some way of mitigating the opportunities that are being created by the way they run their establishment.
The other thing that I think might be helpful is that area, I think, needs some attention. They're not, I know, the only establishment in the area, so I think that, certainly there was some testimony that was part of the effect. In fact, Officer Simino, I think, recognized that that's a tough area with a couple of places getting out at the same time, and the whole neighborhood, I think, needs some thought. Chief, did you did you want to comment? I saw a wave. Oh, okay. Mr. Duffy?
I just would like, there was some comment about police details, and that's probably not an option that you're going to have. The police department has its own policy not to allow its officers to be on detail at premises where they're serving alcohol. It's also, I think, a violation of the conflict of interest law in that for the police officer to be on a paid detail at an alcoholic beverage, a place where alcoholic beverage is poured, is incompatible with their principal duties as a police officer. So that's consideration.
Very
if there's going to be any additional security provided in the parking lot or in the building, it's going to have to be probably a private detail. Okay. Not a private detail of police, but a private detail from somewhere else.
Thank you. And so with respect to a continuation, would your suggestion be the next meeting, 2 weeks?
It would be December 4th.
I can do whatever you want. It's up to you folks.
Are the parties available December 4th? If you could come to the podium and just confirm. Mr. McLaughlin, if you would.
Yes, we can confirm December 4th.
Thank you. Chief?
I'm available.
Thank you very much. And so could we have a formal motion?
I move that we continue this hearing till December 4th.
Thank you.
I'll second that, but then for discussion on the
Yep.
continuance. Certainly, I hope that the owners do understand my appreciation for what they've done in the past, but are aware that what they're suggesting as remedies will not satisfy me, and that they're going to need to be prepared either to propose other things, and I'm not sure actually if they would be even discussing during our December 4th meeting. That is our chance to come up with what the penalty is going to be.
Correct.
And so they can be here to listen to it, but would love to hear that they have talked to the chief and that they're actually willing to consider something more than lighting and a private security, because I don't think that's sufficient.
Maybe we'll have something in writing from them by then with an outline of a plan.
Sam?
What really bothers me is they're creating an unsafe situation for people in the area, but also for our police force as well. I mean, they have to try to handle people who aren't thinking rationally. And that's a really difficult situation to try to deal with. And so that's really what's disturbing to me, is that we're creating an environment for people to act extremely irresponsibly and quite aggressively.
With respect to the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Parties, you're all set until December 9th. Thank you, Chief.
December 4th, Madam Chair.
4th, sorry, December 4th. Thank you. Good catch. Next, we have a report from the Library Board of Trustees. Welcome.
Fee hearing.
Am I wrong?
Fee hearing.
Oh, sorry about that, I missed one. Sorry. Hold on. False start. Next, we have the fee hearing for 2018. Thank you.
Madam Chair, for the fee hearing, I'm prepared to make a motion on all these fees, with the exception I'd like to hear from the fire chief about the fire and rescue department. But I can be happy to read the other ones, both with the present fee and proposed fee as my motion, if that would please the board, the rest of the board to, I think we do want to have that in the record.
I think that makes sense. Let me read the notice, and then we'll take that suggestion. I think that'll work great, and then if anyone else has a suggestion. So the public hearing notice, as provided under Chapter 119 of the Code of Falmouth, public hearing will be held in the Selectmen's Meeting Room, Falmouth Town Hall, Monday, November 20, 2017, at 8:10 p.m. to establish and promulgate fees which are effective as of January 1, 2018, to be charged by town departments and agencies, except as provided by general laws, school department, planning board, library, town clerk, town treasurer, and collector of taxes. And we will go forward with the proposed fees. The Falmouth Enterprise was where this was printed on November 10. Is there anyone else who has a request with respect to the hearings? Hearing on the fee changes? Okay, do you want to start?
Sure, I would move the beach department for time-sharing interval ownership go from $30 to $35. The assessors, copies of certified abutters list go from $20 to $25. The Board of Selectmen fees for the special event permit fees, events of 50 or more people, go from $100 a day to $200 a day, including setup days. Road races, which would be by distance, less than 5K, up to 49 people, go from 25 to 50. 50 to 300 people go from 100 to 150. 300 plus people from 200 to 250. 5K up to 10K, up to 49 people, 100 to 150. 50 to 300 people, $150 to $200 a day, and 300 plus people, $300 to $350 a day. A 10K to marathon, up to 49 people would be $150 a day to $200 a day. 50 to 300 people would be $200 a day to $250 a day, and 300 plus people would be $400 to $450 a day. Conservation Commission, Category 1A, construction of single-family housing, including raise rebuild, would be go from $100 to $200. The revised plan fee would go from $50 to $75. The reissuance of a permit currently does not have a fee. That would become $25. And there would be no charge for additional site visit fee from $50 to being deleted.
Can I have
so
a
I'll
motion?
stop then.
Thank you.
Second.
On those? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And would someone like to read health through marine?
Sure. Health, disposal works, construction permits, for new residential systems from 100 to delete, and then residential systems, none to $100. I don't really understand that exactly, do you?
Instead of limiting to new, all residential systems are going to have a permit of $100.
Oh, okay.
Right, just makes it broader.
Okay. New commercial or multifamily systems from 150 to delete. Commercial or multifamily systems where there was no fee, now it's 150. Repairs to single-family home residence systems, 75 is deleted. Repairs to commercial or multifamily systems, $100 is now deleted. Food service permits, annual or seasonal food service permit, fewer than 50 seats would be 100. The old fee was 100, now it's 125. Annual or seasonal food service permit, more than 50 seats, from 125 goes to 150. Retail food service permits, less than 5,000 square feet, goes from 100 to being deleted. And why is that?
The next one.
Oh, retail food establishments, less than 5,000 square feet. Retail space with potentially hazardous food preparation, $100. The new fee is $150. Okay, mobile food service permits, all other, 50 to, changes to $75. Other permits, percolation test, $75, will now be $100. Marine and environmental services, moorings, mooring permit, transfer change fee goes from no fee to $100. Slips, wharfage, transient processing transaction fee, previously no fee, now it'll be $3.50 each. Is that per foot?
I think it's each transaction.
Oh, each transaction, okay. Yep. Charter boat section, resident from $154 a foot to $156 a foot. Non-resident from $177 a foot to $179 a foot.
Take a motion on those.
A second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Chief, if you would, with respect to fire and rescue, we have ambulance billing being suggested BLS base rate going from $950 to $1,294. The ALS 1 base rate, $1,300, going up to $2,030. Thank you. The ALS 2 base rate going from $1,800 to $3,090. And the specialty care transport going from $1,134.39 up to $3,458. And Chief, if you would start, I know that the last time you were here for a fee increase, the board heard your presentation in terms of needs and how you thought this made sense, and however, we kind of decided sort of a pilot to inch up a little slower than you had requested. Can you just start there and then move into your presentation today?
Sure. I've only got a couple of, I've actually got a couple of, I don't think I've got the AV ability, but this is basically a couple of PowerPoint slides, but that's what I just got you. So if you want to we'll just go along on paper. So that's all right. So
that's fine.
So you just read what the proposed change is. Basically,
yep.
It's like you said, it's a targeted increase. The number that I came up with was targeted toward effectively matching what you approved last year, which was generally, we anticipated what you approved, bringing in about an additional $300,000 in revenue. It's going to be just about $290,000 in increased revenue. So this fee proposal this year is just simply targeted toward matching what you have already approved. So what you approved for last year, which was basically to generate about 300, and it should generate just under, all things being equal, about $300,000 in additional revenue. Obviously what I'm, primarily what I'm, looking for is obviously to fund what I'm asking for in my budget. I know how that works. I understand that that's not but obviously if I were to advocate for where the revenue would go, clearly that's really what I'm trying to do, is just sort of fund what I'm asking for in my budget. What I did for all the data you have in front of you comes from ComStar, who was our ambulance billing company, just because they're able to produce a lot of this data on one click. They've got hundreds and hundreds of clients. I didn't even, again, my initial thought was it's targeted to raising that certain amount of money. I didn't have them make any comparisons to any other fire departments. I initially wasn't even going to present comparisons to any other fire departments, but then for the sake of giving you folks some data points, I asked them to sort of come up with an average of sort of, and strictly municipal fire departments. I know last year there was some consternation about speaking about districts, so none of the data in here reflects districts. All of them are only municipal fire departments.
And they're southeastern Mass or Cape-oriented?
Generally Eastern Massachusetts, correct.
Yep.
Again, though, I didn't specify any municipalities, only that his comparison, that ComStar's comparison be with municipalities, not districts. So sort of that second page, you see that it's got that reference of some Eastern Massachusetts fire departments where Falmouth falls, and where I think are sort of a reasonable, kind of come to the middle increase is certainly certainly valid. There is one thing I have to point out. You'll see this 9-client reference, 9-client average. He initially had submitted 10 municipalities to me. After I had done my submittal to you folks, I looked back through it. One of them was Katuitt. Katuitt is a district, so I had him take that off.
Okay.
In order to not have any comparisons.
Do you have this on the overhead or no?
I could probably make it work. I've got a couple of slides I could try to make work. My AV skills
Peter, are you able to help with that?
Absolutely.
I think that, if it won't take too long, I think that might be helpful, just so we can point out how these numbers are relevant.
That's the one.
The TV guys are asking us not to do that anymore. They just did that at the last meeting.
Well, it's one thing for them to ask, it's another thing for us to see.
Great.
Yeah, but just one of the two.
They
Great.
were,
There we go.
Okay.
CTV was asking that we stop doing that at the last meeting we were at.
Hitting the light?
Yeah.
Well, it would be good for us to be able to see it.
Right, yeah, it's kind of for the purpose of the meeting, but maybe we'll work that out with the upgrades to the room.
I'll just recap it again. I've only got a couple of slides, and excuse me, what's right in front of you. So this was my proposed change. On the left, you see is what you folks approved last year. Again, I do want to point out, specialty care transport has got an asterisk next to it. I know that's got a really high number on the right. We don't bill specialty care transport. That's an allowable billing category. We don't bill at that rate. Specialty care transports are basically sort of high-end interfacility transfers with like a critically ill child in an incubator, or with doctors and nurses in the back. We don't bill at that rate. We bill basic life support, ALS 1 and ALS 2. So that's that. I throw that in there for comparison because it's in a lot of his data. We don't bill at specialty care transport rates.
But even though we have it in our fee chart. Because that's the one the biggest one I had the question on, was that
I
one.
probably could have taken that out, but I didn't want to edit what he gave me. I didn't want to edit out the data that he gave me. Some places some municipalities may bill specialty care transport. I don't know. We do not.
So for our purposes, in terms of any motion to change the fee, we should delete special care transport, because that...
You could certainly do that,
We'll take that
correct.
right out. Thank you. That's a good clarification. Okay, go ahead.
And again, it's targeted, it's basically targeted to mirror what you folks approved last year. The numbers are coming in it's a calendar year, obviously went into effect in January. We had to sort of extrapolate out the fourth quarter, but we anticipate about a little bit more than $290,000. So this, if you do choose to approve this, it's designed to generate basically about another, just under $300,000.
So on that point, one of the things that the board had concerns about was just really, affordability, taking too much of a jump at a time. And then I think Sam had some good questions about really comparing to, similar services in the area. So have you had any, have you become aware of any concerns or?
Nothing. No complaints, no issues, nothing.
Okay, Sam,
Nothing.
you had a question?
Yeah, okay, so you've generated $300,000 per year you're proposing for FY19. What would those services, those increased services include?
What I'm realistically looking for is to justify the request in my budget for new personnel, for 8 new positions and the 1 unfunded firefighter personnel.
300,000 is going to cover 8 new people?
300,000 times 2, so it's last year and this year.
Oh,
so it's designed. Last year I asked for this. It's basically just trying to, for the most part, fund what I'm asking for in my budget.
Okay.
So 300,000 times 2 would cover the lion's share of 8.
So what's your justification for adding that many additional personnel and therefore services for the town?
Sure. Obviously, the overriding concern is is 2 overriding concerns with me: the 1-person fire engines and the 4th ambulance in Woods Hole, which is only staffed about 50% of the time. This I'm asking for 8 in my budget because I'm attempting to fund 8. 8 is not going to get us to completely eliminate 1-man fire engines. It's certainly not. It's not a touchdown, but it certainly gets us in the red zone. It's about 75% of the staffing issues. There's obviously, which we talk about regularly, there's some contractual issues as well. And the 1-man fire trucks they're on life support, and they're going to go away. And I'm attempting to sort of try and have those resources in place in order to do that sooner than later.
So you're saying as a department head, you're trying to make your department work?
Absolutely. We did about just under 7,300 emergency calls last year. We're about 500 runs ahead this year of where we were last year. So this is going to go a long, long way toward, again, getting the 4th ambulance in service much more efficient, much safer for the citizens, much safer for the firefighters. Just would be much better prepared to handle really just a typical day.
So even with the increase in fees, you've actually increased business, so to speak?
Correct.
Any questions, Doug?
Yeah, I guess this is the second year in a row I've been very concerned about this conversation. I would much rather say, we'll find $300,000 in our operating budget to fund. That question's done. Now let's talk about what we're going to do with the rescue department. I'm troubled that the chief feels it's up to him to find the revenue to fund the employees. No other department has to do that. We don't ask them to, we don't expect them to. We don't make the school department come up with the revenue that they're going to get to hire their employees. And I understand you feel that pressure, and I'm sorry you do, because I don't think that's appropriate. I think it's appropriate for us to come up with the money to, if we believe there should be more firemen, come up to find the money for it. And we could say fees could be one way, but I'm a little troubled by the 2 numbers adding up. I'd rather say, let's decide what we want to do about funding firemen, and in a separate conversation, let's decide what we're going to do about the billing.
Well,
Second
I think
question,
that's a good point.
The second question maybe you can answer is, the effect of this rate, however, helps the general coffers of the town and is burdened on the insurance company, which ends up coming to us anyway, but I think the information you have given us is it's only about 2% of these calls that are self-pay.
Correct.
That it's not being paid by the
Insurance
individual who's being taken off.
It's correct. About 80% of our call volume, a little bit more than 80% is Medicare, Medicaid, elderly. This has no impact on Medicare, Medicaid, elderly people, no impact at all. They pay, Medicare, Medicaid recipients are only responsible for the copay. Most Falmouth Medicare people on Medicare have a supplemental. If they do not, it's about $84.
No matter whether we have this rate or different.
This has no impact on that at all.
Well, that leads us to the next slide, I think, in terms of...
And that's always a question, and that's kind of why, again, quickly though, I was asked specifically to provide Yarmouth's comparison data, which I did, which is in there. It should be, I just want to note, when I called the fire chief down there last Monday, he had said, your ears must be burning. I was just talking about you with my town manager and finance director there. Chief Simodian reported to me they're going to pursue an increase in Yarmouth in January. Their increase is targeted toward hiring firefighters, but I think they operate a little bit differently there than we do. He allowed me to quote him on that, so he said, if you want to call him up, you can call him. I got his permission to quote him. But we do get to that last slide. Again, I understand that the concern, there's a lot of concern about amongst elderly. This has no impact on them. It's only about the 20% that we bill that's billed to private insurance. Self-pay in Falmouth last year was about 2.7% was the total self-pay. And we work diligently with people that can't, nobody's knocking on anybody's door. We have a long-standing abatement policy in place. We don't report to the credit bureaus. Comstar does have a kind of a, I don't want to say kind or gentler, but they do have a collection process, but people that demonstrate any inability to pay, we just write them off. That's been the long-standing town policy.
Sam?
Well, I don't see any members of the Finance Committee here, so I'm going to be their voice for the time being. But I mean, one of the things that we consistently try to do is not increase personnel costs, because that's something that just keeps on going on forever. So it seems to me that we need to challenge you, to ask you, is there a more efficient way for us to deliver the same high level of services, but with less cost, or at least reduce cost? I mean, not as much cost, because it sounds to me, what you're telling me is you're trying to get away from a single fireman or rescue person on a single vehicle. Should we be looking at consolidating fire stations so that we actually have, multi-persons staffing one or two vehicles, as the case may be?
Most certainly that. Most certainly, I've advocated for the North and West Falmouth. The West Falmouth Fire Station is old. No fire truck's going to fit in there. I would love to move forward with combining the North and West Falmouth Fire Station on Thomas Landers Road by the highway into one modern fire station, but it's got to be appropriately staffed. Our staffing issues in Falmouth have been, we're so far behind the 8 ball with our current contractual staffing of 10 right now is what we had in 1978. We did about 1,500 emergency calls. We're going to do close to 8,000 this year with that same number of people.
Chief, I'm just a little concerned with the agenda items just being the
I understand, sure.
Billing. I know Mr. Patterson asked the question, but I just don't want to go too far afield.
I would, and this may, with Mr. Jones, that second piece of, that second packet of paperwork I handed you, I wasn't able to get that into a slide. That's just a general comparison of where Falmouth is with about 115 other municipal fire departments in the area, not just Massachusetts. And so if that, again, if you approve what I'm asking for tonight, really only puts Falmouth in the middle of the pack. I think right now it's 3 pages. I apologize for how it printed. I had to, not really good at printing spreadsheets, but I wasn't able to get that onto a slide, but that shows where Falmouth's current rate structure is in comparison to other municipalities.
And so looking at the references, and then just so that folks here and at home can kind of get an idea of what we're looking at, on the bottom would be your requests. So average base, you're looking to go from...
well, the average, yeah, step away from the average. That's just sort of where we fall in line.
Okay.
The only increase I'm looking for is basic life support, ALS 1 and ALS 2.
So it'd be on the very bottom line, section, the second, third, and fourth column is what we're looking at.
The current one is the bottom row.
Right, and then the request is on top of that.
It's very close to the one above it.
So where you're requesting for BLS 1,278, we see that Oak Bluffs charges about $500 more, for example. And then there's a list of other places that charge a little less, a little more.
The number on this one's actually the average of these 9, and the request he's putting forward is $12.94.
So is
it's
that-
about $16 more than what the average is.
And again, I based my request on this average without knowing what the municipalities were.
Right.
Intentionally to avoid the sort of the, I didn't want to be accused of cherry picking data, so I intentionally sort of did it blindly. And again, though, there was the 10th factor in there, which was after I had submitted mine, I had them take it out because that's not
I
a
see.
municipality. So that's why the number I'm requesting is a little bit different than what you're seeing from that average.
Okay.
I mean, you could choose it, you could round it up, round it down. It's,
Peter?
So how were the communities selected? You said blind. but-
by ComStar. I asked him,
Okay.
I asked them.
Why not pick communities that compare more reasonably to Falmouth? Like to look for good comps, to not do it blind.
I
mean, Yarmouth is the example. You gave us the data, and they're, I think, the second largest department, and they're much lower than these comparisons that you gave us.
Respectfully, that's what I did last year, and I got some pushback from cherry-picking data, so I wanted it to be blind.
Okay.
Good answer. Okay. Other questions from the board?
I know you,
Discussions? Doug?
there's some concern about the way it's presented to fund firefighters, but it makes sense, and it's been year after year that we've been unable to fund these additional firefighters, so I think it's actually very reasonable. Maybe it's not the correct policy, but it makes sense. It's hard to argue the logic.
But to vote this fee here is not voting funding those firefighters.
No, I agree with you, I understand, but that's the reason of coming to us.
I know, but I mean, if we vote this fee, it doesn't mean necessarily that we've also voted to that operating budget's gonna have that additional money in it.
No, absolutely doesn't. But when you get to town meeting next year and say, this firefighters have, the fire department has raised more revenue and there's a justification for funding more firefighters, I mean.
Well, right, and we're talking, about a creative department head who's, working for, looking at what's in front of him, but what's in front of the board right now is just, the simple question of raising the fees.
Right,
So,
in which we've been giving away service for too cheap for too long.
Does anyone have a motion?
Madam Chair, could I just interject? I
Please.
just wanted to be clear, unlike other departments in the town, the fire department has had new personnel each of the last 2 years in the budget that this board has approved and has gone to town meeting. So they have been the exception to really what has been a rule of no new hiring by and large. It has not been in great quantities, but the fire department has been an exception to that for at least the past 2 years.
And I think that really is a compliment to, the department head and the town manager working together and with good advice to the board. So that point is very well taken. Stan?
And I'm trying to be a good steward of the town's finances. If we can deliver better services, by consolidating a couple of the fire departments through one capital expense, right?
But that's not on our agenda.
Well,
I'm
no.
just trying to be careful.
Well, I know
Yeah.
well, you say that, but clearly the justification for this is because we need additional operating funds.
Operating funds.
So we have to ask the question, is this the right approach? Or should we be looking at a more comprehensive approach that actually is in the best interest of the citizens of the town? I want to give good services, don't get me wrong. I just don't know whether feeding more people into an inefficient deployment of personnel and equipment makes any sense. That's the question I'm raising. So, and you're justifying it based on wanting to improve operating capabilities. And I'm saying, well, wait a minute, can we do even better by just reconfiguring our department, and finding a more effective way to operate? So I'm just going to raise that question, but I'm very uncomfortable because we know about the rate at which healthcare costs go up, and what we're doing is just feeding that escalation of healthcare costs in this country. And, we're asking hospitals to figure out better ways to do it for less money and deliver the same quality of services. I think we should be asking ourselves that same question.
I just am really put off by percentage increases of this magnitude, of going 1,300 to 2,000 and 1,800 up to 3,100. It's just such a huge percentage increase, even if it is just the 2.7% or the insurance company. More and more insurance policies, there's a deductible that you have to cover, and that's going to, in those 20%, I think a lot of these people are going to be paying for that.
Do you have a level of comfort in terms of an increase?
Well, I looked at some numbers, and I was thinking that if I don't have any problem with the BLS base rate going to $12.94. That's not too horrendous a jump. But the ALS one, it seems to me that a $500 increase, so let it go to $1,800, was a more reasonable step up, and it's still significant. And the ALS two, I just thought, well, why don't we go to $2,400 instead of $3,000, essentially $3,100. So that's what I would be willing to
Is that
to
your
move.
motion?
That's my motion, that the new BLS base rate be $1,294, that the new ALS 1 base rate be $1,800, and that the new ALS 2 base rate be $2,400. And I think that respects our chief's request, but just doesn't go the whole 9 yards.
Second. Okay, and further discussion?
What would be the total of the revenue increase?
I don't have his spreadsheet to generate that, but I presume it would be closer to 150,000 instead of 300,000.
Do you have further comment or question?
I don't know. I just feel like we're just a small town, and it's a big insurance world out there, and I don't have a lot of sympathy for the insurance companies. I know that we're a part of raising the rates, but we're here on our own.
Do you want to make a separate motion? Or?
Amend it?
Well, I don't like the idea of cutting it in half, and I don't feel qualified to choose the real number, honestly. I was happy with the chief's proposal, but...
That's why we get paid the big bucks.
Can I make an observation? Respectfully, I think half the fees that you just approved on a blanket were effectively doubled. And I would ask that you don't get lost in the fact that the math is so big. It's a double, it's effectively, I understand it's a big percentage, but it's a big percentage because it's a big number.
Most of them were maybe 50% increases, but not quite. I mean, I was looking at that fairly carefully, trying to avoid that.
Understand.
And he's not doubling. We're going from $800 or $950 to $1,200 on the basic one, and that's the majority of the calls, right? It's not doubling. That's very in line with...
Yeah, and I didn't recommend that we change that one. I thought that was reasonable. No, it was the ALS 1 and the ALS 2. You know, and I'm looking at a 40% jump in both of those, and that just seems to me like that's as far as I want to go. I mean...
In light of Mr. Patterson, in light of Mr. Brown's comments, would you want to tweak your motion at all?
No, I'm comfortable with that, and if he wants to make another motion or vote against it, fine.
All right. Any more discussion? We'll take the vote on Mr. Patterson's motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed? 1.
I'm opposed. I'd like to keep it what he suggested.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
No, thank you for your good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was Doug. Yeah, it was Doug Jones.
Next, under business, we'll now take the report of the Library Board of Trustees. Sorry for the false start before. Lights. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Abrams. I'm Chair of the Falmouth Public Library Board of Trustees.
Welcome.
To you too. This won't be too long. It's pretty straightforward. So we'll talk about the past year. Again, relatively another rewarding year for the Board of Library Trustees as we continue to be the link between the library and the public. Our director, Leslie Morrissey, retired in November 2016, and we sorely miss her. She'd been director since 2004 during the capital campaign for the library renovation and the expansion project. While she is sorely missed, we are also really extremely happy with our new library director, Linda Collins, the former assistant director. And we have a new assistant director now. Her name is Jennifer Woodward, and she's great. So everyone's on board, and things are chugging along. Otis Porter, a trustee for a very long time, left the board this year, and we have a new trustee on board, Judy Fenwick. So we're happy to have Judy on board. We've been doing a lot of stuff at the branches the past year or so, and that's probably going to continue for the next couple of years. At North Falmouth, planning is continuing for renovation and/or expansion. We had an article on the April 2017 town meeting warrant that sought to petition the state legislature for permission to use additional land to add on to the North Falmouth branch. This project, there's nothing simple about this project. There's a lot of moving parts. For improvements to the facility. However, an archaeological reconnaissance showed that the grounds in the back might contain Native American artifacts or ancestral remains. Nobody's really sure. So the article has been postponed indefinitely until this could be determined to ensure that the project would not interfere with any possible remains. There are some more recent developments on this project. The location of the proposed building, instead of renovating it right in place, has been moved to a different part of the property now. And the architecture firm is called Stephen Hale and Associates. I think they're out of Boston. They're going to be doing the feasibility study. And the company that's doing the project management is called Vertex. All right. So we're hoping to begin construction in 2023. We'll see how it goes. Also at North this year, the staff was supplemented for several months by the addition of the staff of the West Falmouth Library while their building was being renovated. This enabled hours to be added at North for several months and allowed the staff at West Falmouth to be able to work for those months. And at East Falmouth, planning has begun for a new children's reading garden, as well as major improvements to the parking areas. This is one of these projects that started out with one thing and then things kind of kept getting added, but it's going to be great when it's done. The project was divided into 3 separate phases. The first, the DPW explored the perimeter of the building foundation in order to figure out how to solve moisture issues in the building, which have been ongoing for years. The second phase involved the parking area. You might have noticed that the trees were cut down this summer. They were just Norway maples, so it really shouldn't be a big deal. This was done to reconfigure the parking lot to provide HP spots where cars can now slide in instead of having to park along the road, and also to improve the grading so that hopefully there won't be any more flooding. So there's a little bike rack that's been added. There's some different things that just keep being added. The third phase is supposed to be the construction of an outdoor reading garden. Again, at first that was going to go in the front, and then as the project has been moving along, it looks like it's going to be more on the side. That has been involving the support of the Falmouth Public Library Support Fund, which is a new entity. I'll talk about that in a little bit. A lot from them. Joe Netto and Bob Ripley have been wonderful. From the East Falmouth Village Association, the trustees, the Friends, and also Peter McGonerty, as usual, he's great, and the DPW, so everyone has been really pulling together for this. I did start to talk about the Falmouth Public Library Support Fund. This is a new 501c3 entity. It became operational this year. It's been established to raise funds and hold donations in order to supplement the basics that the town pays for. Which leads me into my next thing. We are hopeful that the lawsuit with the Cape Cod Foundation will be resolved soon, so hopefully, whether or not I'm standing here next year in front of you, somebody will be able to say it's done, and then the library will have access to funds that were donated to the benefit of the library. And then this is my usual stick that I always say, but it's always important to say. There are a huge variety of programs that are held in all of the meeting rooms at the library, not just the main, but the branches as well, making these rooms highly sought after. The trustees fund many of these popular programs. During the past year, we funded 22 adult programs, 8 children's programs, 12 teen programs, 9 staff development programs for individual staff members, a website upgrade, and the yearly public computer lease. We are very grateful to the Friends of the Falmouth Public Library, who tirelessly toil away all year to hold the huge summer book sale, which makes more and more money every year, and more people come to town just for that book sale, plus smaller sales inside the building. The money that they raise enables the library to support and sponsor many library events and programs. Our sincerest appreciation goes to the staff and the administration of the Falmouth Public Library. Their dedication to the library and its services have created a warm and welcoming environment. I think they're the reason that we have the best library on Cape Cod, maybe even Massachusetts. Thank you very much.
Very nice, very nice.
Humbly submitted.
Boy, a little too humble, but otherwise a nice report.
The library's nice.
It certainly is.
Low-key place.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Great. Well, you know, libraries are important, notwithstanding the internet age. It's great, thank you.
You're welcome. Should I leave one for Megan, or?
Yes, I'll give it to her. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Very nice. Next, we have the report of the Energy Committee. Welcome.
We have some slides, so if we could have a little dimming of the lights, that would be great.
Great.
You want to use the remote or you come?
Oh.
What, you need to use the, yes.
I kind of scoot over here because I can't.
That's okay. And then just introduce
need to look at my
yourself
slides a little bit as we go through.
For our TV audience.
I am Megan Amsler, Chair of the Energy Committee, and thank you very much for having us in here for our annual update on activities that we've been up to as a committee. Just a brief history of a lot of the things that has been accomplished relating to energy in the town of Falmouth. We've not been asleep at the wheel here, but I wanted to go pretty fast. So I am here, one of the things I wanted to encourage is participation in setting a goal for 100% renewable energy for the town of Falmouth. The Energy Committee is going to host a stakeholder visioning session for what that would look like on January 27th, 2018, and we would love input from the Selectmen on how to achieve this goal. And it's going to be open to all different stakeholders because, of course, there are so many different facets of the community that need to have a say in what this is going to look like and pick some dates and really help us through that. We also would encourage, I know back in 2008, the Selectmen signed a climate proclamation through the U.S. Mayor's treaty or something, I can't exactly remember which group it was, but the Compact of Mayors is this international group, and it's tied to the ICLEI program, which we, back in 2002, joined the ICLEI program and has set the stage for how we do our energy benchmarking and our greenhouse gas emissions inventory, which I'm going to give you a little bit of an update on that too. But at any rate, it's the world's largest cooperative of towns and government entities that keep track of all of this data. And has some really great frameworks to work within. So, one of the other activities that I wanted to give you a bit of a report on is in your 5-year plan, one of the things that you asked the Energy Committee to conduct was an assessment of solar potential at all municipal properties. So I had one of our summer interns through Self-Reliance actually conduct this for the town. And I have a full deck of slides, but I really, just for tonight's sake, wanted to give you this high-level summary so that you could see, and I pulled out in the subsequent slides, some of the very high and the high potential sites. But we have the potential of 6 megawatts of solar on looking at all of the different, and that does not include looking at the capped landfill. So we excluded that. Because it's under development already. But one of the, just an example, is the high school, so looking at parking canopies, some roof-mounted things. You can see the little teeny tiny array that actually exists currently on the roof there. But this is one of the sites that has very high solar potential. Here is the East Falmouth Elementary School, which is another really, you could get almost 500 kW of PV set up here in parking lot canopies and on some of the roof structures there. Lawrence is another wide open parking lot and also some available roof space there should it be deemed appropriate. So 368 kW if you can't see that really dark font that I used up there. And then skipping ahead, one of the other things that we worked on this summer and have been working on as a committee for a little while is wrapping up an inventory of the energy consumption and the greenhouse gas emissions for our 10 and 15-year benchmarks. So we did an initial benchmark for the year 2001, then we did a subsequent benchmark for 2006, and we've conducted these other two, which we did this summer, and you can see that the actual consumption has gone down, which is really nice because we've invested money in our ESCO program and a lot of other really good programs here in the town of Falmouth, and so that is nice to see that reflected. Emissions, thankfully, correlate with the reduced energy consumption, so that too has gone down, and this is really helpful data when we start to think about how are we going to meet the Global Warming Solutions Act that is in place at the state level, and we are beholden to meet those goals, but we're headed in the right direction, which is a really good thing to see. Oh, wait, back up. Outdoor and street lighting, this is another thing where it's been a couple of years, but Falmouth really did a lot of due diligence in terms of how we wanted our street lights to look, and we leveraged the great work of the Cape Light Compact and got those street lights to become LED, and you can see a dramatic drop in the amount of energy use in terms of kilowatt hours that we are now using for our exterior illumination.
And they don't look weird anymore.
No, they don't. It's very nice. There's no weird orange glow on my street, and so yeah, it's good. And so yeah, our recommendation is that you guys endorse 100% renewable energy goal for Falmouth when we get it together, and hopefully with your input. And we also would recommend that the town of Falmouth become a green community, and that is through the Department of Energy Resources at the state level, and there of course are monetary carrots associated with joining that program. So that is all I have. Any questions?
I have, with respect to the recommendations for solar.
Yeah.
Have you had an opportunity to forward that to the superintendent of schools and the school committee?
I have not.
Would you mind if Mr. Suso's office did that? Would you provide?
Sure. I think it definitely deserves conversation, which is why I don't want to send it out into the.
Well, it's just a matter of, there was a report given by the Energy Committee and it referenced the schools, and so the selectmen asked that it be, the school department know. That's all.
Okay.
And then, what are the carrots? In other words, what are the costs associated with becoming a green community or having a 100% renewable energy goal, and what are the benefits?
So they're very distinctive things. So 100% renewable energy goal, there would of course be something that I certainly can't speak to what the costs are. There's no cost of coming up with a target and a goal and objectives. There, of course, are costs associated with the development and however we would map out moving forward. I think one of the things that our committee has really been looking at in great depth is there are a lot of other cities and towns that have set these 100% renewable energy goals, and we want to make sure that it's attainable. And how do you attain this? And is it just for electricity? Is it for vehicular transportation? Is it for stationary power, for heating and cooling in buildings and residences? And how do we accomplish that? What are the incentives and what are the barriers to making that happen in a, economically sustainable fashion? So those are things that we're looking at, and we certainly hope will be discussed in our visioning session on the 27th of January. The recommendation for Falmouth becoming a green community, those incentives, there's no cost for us joining. We would have to pass the stretch code, which right now is pretty much on par with what the current International Energy Conservation code portion of our building code is. And the incentive, the financial incentive from the state is based on our ability to reach a number of goals in the future, and it's also based on our population. So there are some metrics in there that I don't have like a very succinct response to that in terms of what it is. But there are grants that we would be eligible to apply for through the state that would be related to energy, and it's on a, on an annual basis type of thing.
That's great. It is great to see all the progress the town has made, in terms of just the actual graphs, and appreciate the Energy Committee picking up that issue of the strategic planning that the selectmen have put out. So that's great. Doug, did you have a?
Just on the 6.5 megawatts of power that theoretically could be put on these buildings.
Yes. You want me to back up to that? Is there a question that you had?
Well, just that NSTAR has to be able to support that within their system.
Absolutely.
It's an idea for the future, but there are some.
Well, there's lots of changes coming down the line with the SMART program, so stand by with that.
Maybe we can become our own community where all our energy we make stays with me, and we don't even have to tap in the outside world. That's what
storage and all that other good stuff.
That's what the Cape Light Compact came to us about, having municipalities become their own energy producers and their own energy users. But
it helps with resiliency.
Why aren't you doing it right away? He said, well, there are some things that we can't jump on immediately, but certainly in the future.
Sam?
Yes, the Energy Committee came to, really, the town a little over a year ago, requesting that we apply for the Green Communities designation, and we fell short.
Yes.
And I was kind of surprised that you didn't come back, because it seemed like the gap that would be required for us to qualify wasn't all that great. Why didn't you come back, I guess, is my question.
Well, I'm here now, and it would be really great to get something on the spring warrant for passing the stretch code in the town of Falmouth.
The due date for articles is January 4th.
It's coming right up,
5th.
right?
Yeah, it's not much more than a month.
Absolutely.
It wouldn't be that much of a stretch. We're already pretty much doing most of it already.
We are indeed.
Yeah.
And I think the thinking about what the financial benefits are to becoming a green community, it's tangible stuff. So.
Doug, did you have a comment?
I was just going to say, do you want to go back to your first slide and just tell us who your other members are?
Oh, sure. Yes, because Bob is here in the back row with me. There. So we have Alex Bocconcelli, Robert Boddiger, Megan O'Reilly, Christina Raleigh, and Paul Raymer.
Okay.
And Bob is here with me tonight.
Thanks for coming, Bob. Thanks to all of you.
Sure. Thanks for having us.
Great report. Appreciate that.
Is anybody else coming up to use the slides, or shall I turn this off?
Don't know yet.
Yeah, perfect.
And it's using energy.
So, Megan, I just want to be sure, go local, go big.
So,
And where is that going to be, do you know?
So that is, because Diane said that you'd asked Ben Hallerstein from Environment Mass to come tonight, and he was unable to attend.
Okay. Do you want to do that?
I can speak to that.
Let's be efficient. Go for it.
Okay, sure. Pinch hitting here. So I'm not totally sure if that's their effort of Environment Massachusetts, but my understanding is that they work with lots of cities and towns to help with this visioning session around what 100% renewable energy would look like. They worked with Vineyard Power and all of the communities on Martha's Vineyard at the end of August to do a similar visioning session. And we have reached out to Ben at Environment Massachusetts to ask that he come and collaborate with us in setting that up so that we can bring examples of successful community endeavors that have set up their 100% renewable energy goal, talked with the different activists around, getting people involved and engaged in the whole process. I asked him specifically because I was reading something about the city of Aspen, Colorado, that has already supposedly achieved their 100% renewable energy goal, so I would really like to hear from that municipality about how did they accomplish that, what were the barriers, and what were the easily achievable things. One of the things about Falmouth is that we have we have scooped up, as you can see from the charts, we've scooped up most of the low-hanging fruit, if you will, in terms of how to reduce our energy consumption, save money, increase comfort in the buildings of the town. We have a little bit of renewable energy generation online right now, but there's certainly a great opportunity for that. It's going to get more and more expensive for us to do the energy efficiency upgrades as we get further on down the line. And when you think about how little energy the municipality uses compared to the overall community, that's why we need stakeholder engagement, because it's really asking all of us as energy users to be part of that transition to renewable energy, 100% renewable energy.
Great. Hope to hear more in January.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have an enforcement action with respect to the Quistit Avenue private sign. Chief? Welcome.
Evening again. Edward Dunn, Police Chief. Back on October 24th, 2017, I issued a letter to Kenneth Morth of 112 Quistit Ave. It's regarding the flashing speed light down there that had been in front of this board before. It was put up with private funds without permits, and et cetera, et cetera. It is in violation of Section 3-4 of the Falmouth traffic rules, and I have the authority, and I took that authority and had that sign shut down and covered at this point in time. And now it's before the board to make a determination what needs to happen with that sign.
Thank you. Is anyone else here on the Quistit sign matter? Would you like to speak? Chief, I'm sorry, one quick question. Did you receive any response?
Yeah, I had the letter hand-delivered, and the caretaker of the property covered the sign and I believe shut it off. And that's all I've heard.
It's covered, but not, now it's see-throughable.
Oh, you can see through? Okay. I haven't been down there at night, but it was covered immediately that day.
Thank you. Mr. Suso, did you have anything to add?
Well, only just to underscore for the board that this has been an installation that's been there for some time, was done without a permit, was shut down for a certain period of time, and frankly, to the surprise of the chief and I, was re-energized and began to operate again. It is a violation of the board's traffic rules, and we're recommending that. It is also, by the way, installation is within the road right-of-way. So there is a significant liability, to my understanding, given that that structure is placed there and not by the municipality. And that is a concern in an area where driving the road can be occasionally challenging, particularly at night, to have obstructions within the road right-of-way that are not part of the municipal layout. The board, it would seem to me, has two options. It is to affirm the determination and directive of the chief to have this removed, cease operation and removed, or I suppose alternatively you can essentially abandon the rules that you have, change them, and somehow determine that it's appropriate for these kinds of matters to go forward without permits, and bring them before the board subsequently.
Well, and I just want to note for the record, we do have a letter from the Quistit Association dated November 6, 2017, essentially discussing the fact that they've been collecting data and working with Engineer Mclaughlin in terms of developing a proposal. But this has gone on for quite a long time, and it certainly has been determined to be an illegal sign. Doug?
Just to disclose, I do live on Quistit Avenue, and I have been a member of the Quistit Association. What I recalled is that this came to us back in September in 2016, and we asked them to go and talk to the Traffic Advisory Committee. And have we had any report that they have done that, or that the Traffic Advisory Committee has any input on this, I mean, I thought the idea was that we were going to ask them for a recommendation as to what they thought, and...
There is information in the letter. It's, in the second paragraph, it said, there's a discussion about traffic management, and it said that the flashing light for excess speed was disabled since our first traffic advisory hearing, when the Traffic Advisory Committee instructed us to disable it. So the proponent of the sign is admitting that they were ordered to disable it by the Traffic Advisory Committee in the statement.
That was the specific flashing strobe light.
Flashing light for excess speed.
That was when it used to flash with a strobe.
Yeah.
And the TAC committee said they had to shut that off, and right away. And they shut that right off right away. And then I thought they were in conversation with the Traffic Advisory Committee about what was going to move forward. And I was surprised that we had no communication from the Traffic Advisory Committee as to what their recommendation was on this matter, because that's what we decided in 2016, is ask the TAC to make a recommendation.
And it seems that the proponent did not go back to TAC to get that information, or they would have stated it in this letter.
I know they've been meeting almost monthly with them, so I guess I just don't have the exact information as to what has been reported with the committee.
I too thought that they were on the path to try to see if it could be permittable in any way, but I don't know, too bad there's no developments.
My general understanding is the Traffic Advisory Committee has no further recommendation, feels it needs to come back to the board because it's, you know, it is not in conformance with the rules.
It does seem that
And
way.
unless you decide you want to change the rules or grant exceptions to the rules, there's nothing they can do because it is in clear violation of those rules.
You know, I think that this, old adage of acting and then asking for forgiveness later is really not being tolerated anymore, and certainly not by the chief of police. And I wouldn't want the board to go in a direction which would, accommodate or encourage further such individual actions. I think that's not the way to keep order at all. And I don't want the board to be in a position of making the police department's job any more difficult than it already is. I think, what's before us is really what should be ordered in terms of this illegal sign. And my view is that it certainly should be ordered removed. It's literally been a year that it's not been permitted. And I think that the town should remove it on order in cooperation with the police, and the association should pay for that removal. I'm sure, I don't know what the actual cost to the town would be, but it's removing a sign.
I'll second that.
Or could we alternately just instruct that it be removed first, and then if they don't take action, then we follow up and remove it ourselves?
I think they haven't taken action in a year. And so I'd want the town to remain in control of the timing.
They've never been directed to remove the sign.
Right.
I think they've directed to cover up the sign, and they did so immediately. I think to just go ahead and remove it without giving them the chance to disconnect the electricity from the from private property, I don't think we need to be that that reactionary. Yes, it is an illegal sign. It is very well intended, as opposed to it is something that is trying to make the police job more difficult. Actually, I think it's trying to be an asset. I agree with you, the idea of putting it up without permission, hoping they get permission later. I do not agree with that strategy, but I think we can certainly request that they remove it.
10 days, something, just give a time limit.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think they were actually trying to be proactive. I suspect that they would be willing to do this. I think they realize that we can't have vigilante efforts putting up traffic control signs around the town, because it's going to end up causing a safety issue. And so there is a reason for this regulation here, and they need to comply with it. So I would certainly give them the opportunity to remove it themselves. It is their property, they paid for it, so if they want to hang on to it and donate it in some way to the town for use somewhere else, or perhaps even use
Or try to-
somewhere in that area.
Maybe try to apply for some sort of permit to do it correctly in the future, who knows?
I'll amend my motion that the association be ordered to remove the sign within 10 days of the issuance of the order by the appropriate party, whether it be the town or the police.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Did someone think I skipped something on an agenda item?
We went from 3 to 6, that's why.
We've been jumping around quite a bit. We've already done 4 and 5.
You've done 4?
Yes.
We're here for 4.
Oh, we took it out of order because we had some time to fill.
And we approved it.
We approved it.
It's approved. Great job. Really good job.
Thank you.
There you go. Just didn't want you here for no reason.
Oh,
So,
sorry.
success.
That's okay. But, and. It was interesting. Thank you.
Great. Okay, next we have discuss and vote request to name Sandwich Road Fields the George Gaspa Sport Complex. Is there anyone here for that? Please.
David.
Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, my name's David Jarvis. Does everybody have a copy of this sheet here?
That sheet, I don't think I do.
I don't think so.
Pretty sure I do.
Oh, that was in the package.
Yeah, we got it.
Oh, yeah.
We do
Yeah,
have
we
it
have
then.
it.
Okay, thanks, sorry.
Well, as it states, at one of our rec committee meetings, we were talking about the policy of naming the fields and how it had sort of changed.
The recreation?
At the Falmouth Recreation,
Yeah.
yes. I'm a former committee member, and Sandy Cooney over there was also a member with me. And as the sandwich field was developing, I thought this might be a good time to recognize George Gasper, because it has a football field, baseball field, and basketball court now. And as you can see, if you read through it, George has been an umpire for 61 years with high school games, football, baseball, basketball. He's been Little League, Babe Ruth. I actually was a referee when I was 16, and George was the head of the ref. So he's been around for a while. He's done Cape Youth Baseball Leagues, softball. He's been in, he's done the Cape League for a few years. George has been at every field, gym on the Cape and Islands. He's been so he's done a football game, basketball, or baseball. So I just thought that it was a time to support George and let him know that the town of Falmouth appreciates all the time and effort he's put into this. Because I would say if any boy or girl has played those sports that I mentioned, know George Gasper. So we're here to ask for your approval to name the Sandwich Road Field the George Gasper Sports Complex.
Thank you, great presentation. And before there are questions, I just want to note, this has really been a long and important, well-thought-out process as required by the town. Mr. Suso, do you want to give the highlights in terms of the naming policy and time required so folks at home know?
Certainly, Madam Chair. The Selectmen's naming policy for public facilities and places adopted back in December of 2010 is a 2-page policy that has specific guidelines about how this process must be followed. And as far as procedure, it specifies that once a submission has been made to the Board of Selectmen, there's a mandatory 12-month waiting period, which must lapse before the board, according to this policy, is able to take the matter up. And this submission came in, was received by the Selectmen's office October 31st, 2016. So this is the first regular meeting of the board since that was transmitted to the Selectman's office. And the procedure goes on to say that after the waiting period has elapsed, a subcommittee of 2 selectmen shall seek the input and advice of whichever department, board, committee, or commission oversees the public facility or place to be named or renamed, and hold a public hearing to seek input from the community. And then following that, the recommendation of the subcommittee shall be considered and voted by the full board in an open regular meeting, requiring a vote of 4 members of the Board of Selectmen. So that is the process that is within your policy that would lie ahead for the board to consider.
Oh, I'd serve on that.
Terrific.
Well, yeah, I'll volunteer as well. I know my daughter played soccer for many years, and he refereed most, if not all, of their games.
I'd move that we appoint Doug Brown and Sam Patterson to be our 2-person committee to talk to the Recreation Department about naming that field, the George Gaspa Sports Complex.
Okay.
And report back to us in 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on this subject? In which case, I assume we'll have a formal answer in 2 weeks.
Just in the notes, it did say that it had 100% support from the Falmouth Recreation Department.
That
No
saves
surprise.
some work.
I'm sure that'll be confirmed by our 2 investigators.
That's great. Thank
We'll
you
get right
very
on it.
much.
Madam
Great
Chair,
presentation.
a follow-up
Yes.
question. The policy does specify the holding of a public hearing. It's a little fuzzy as to whether this is to be held by the subcommittee or the full board. I'm assuming that you would hold the full,
We'll
full
list
board
it as
will
a hearing.
Hold the public hearing at your next regular meeting.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a hearing.
Exactly.
Very good.
Thank you. I know. I have a lot of those requests. Thank you. We do pack them full.
Flying along them.
Next, we have a discussion with respect to Woods Hole and Falmouth Heights parking meters. Chief, sorry for the late night. He is a popular guy.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Parking meters, Woods Hole, Falmouth Heights. Back last year, we discussed a pilot program. Meters under the rules and regulations are for 2 hours, and you discussed a pilot program for the meters to be active for 3 hours. And before you, I don't know if everybody has them. If not, I have extra copies. Do you have them? Okay. You have 3 documents here. One is for the Woods Hole parking meter report, Falmouth Heights parking meter report, and then there's the second one that's for the Woods Hole. If we start with the first one that says Woods Hole parking meter report, September 30th. You'll see on there, when the town purchased the new meters, they're smart meters. As we've said before, the smart meters will give us a lot of information, and that's how we were able to determine some times as to the amount of times that the meters are used. And you will see back in December 2016 for Luscombe Ave and Water Street, those 2 lines there, they have to do with the 29, I think it's 29 meters that this board allowed to have free parking over the winter. So that's what these times are from. It's from those 29 meters. And you'll see the times. Those are the average times for those 29 meters. 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.8. And that's during the winter months. Then you get into the summer months, June, July, August, 1.3, 1.3, 1.3, 1.4. Nobody's staying there the 2 hours, never mind the 3 hours. Part of running these, and you'll see on there's also some revenue. We have to talk about revenue. Even though meters for this town weren't purchased to create revenue, they have to support themselves. These smart meters, there are monthly fees for the cellular, for the sensors. And if you look on the bottom here, on the revenue here, for revenue lost and revenue, for the month of December, January, February, and March, which you allowed for the free parking during those 3 hours, there was a revenue loss of $33,000. And again, that's for those particular meters right there. Same thing if you go to Falmouth Heights. Again, we put them on the 3-hour time limit, and you can see by the average time, people are not staying there for the 3 hours.
But again, that's an average.
It's an average.
So there very well could be
There
a
very
bunch
well
of people
could
staying
be.
3 hours and some people staying 10 minutes.
Correct. It's only the average that comes up. But because of the amount of hours here, the average seems to be low across the board, because if they were staying there, if the bulk of the meters, they were staying there for the 2 hours or the 3 hours, that average would go up, of course.
And how does the 3-hour limit cause a problem for operation of these? I mean, you seem opposed to the 3-hour
Well,
limit.
first of all, it was a pilot program. The rules and regs, and the board can change the rules and regs at 2 hours. 3 hours, again, they run from in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. With 3 hours, you're only getting your turnover on a day. Your turnover, which are what meters are designed for, is to turn over so you can turn parking over. Your turnover is cut down.
But only if they actually stay for 3 hours.
If they stay for 3
the data's saying
hours.
only staying for an hour, then actually it doesn't matter whether we have 3 hours or not, because they're turning over on their own without the 3-hour limit needing to cause the turnover.
Correct.
What about on Main Street here? Are we getting are we getting many tickets for past 3 hours?
There are tickets being issued on Main Street, correct.
I mean, is it a significant?
I didn't bring the numbers tonight, but I can get you those results. But part of the issue here also is the board allowing, I'm not against some sort of free parking program, but as you can see, the amount of revenue lost, these meters have to basically support themselves. And if they're not going to support themselves, I'm going to suggest you take all the meters out.
I assume we have a contract for these,
We do.
so that would present a problem. What about in terms of management? Is it a challenge in terms of the various parking times in changing the times across town in terms of managing?
I'm going to ask Lieutenant DeCosta. Lieutenant DeCosta is in charge of my records division. He also operates these meters and works with the company. So I'm going to ask him to come up and talk to you on some of those questions.
Welcome. Thank you, Chief.
Good evening. I'm Lieutenant Douglas DeCosta with the Falmouth Police Department. So the meters, as the chief said, they're smart meters. So they're good to us. The data that comes through is quite extensive. Obviously, the main purpose is to accept the payment, so it gets through. But it also monitors the payments that come in throughout the year, as well as state periods through a vehicle detection, and it also has software installed that we can use right through the cellular connection that goes back to a server and back to us. So a few steps, but we get a lot of data out of those. So with that, yes, we can change things around, but they were a little bit problematic as we came through the year of changing them back and forth. They can be outfitted with different periods. The company recommended periods in the front, perhaps 15 minutes, half an hour, depending on what thoughts you're looking at. But to tell the meter not to operate became problematic over the few months we had. Almost, it'd be better to take them out at that point in time. Like I said, it is a smart meter. It can do a lot of things, but its main purpose is to accept payment for a parking space.
Now, the agenda today is really a discussion in terms of exchange of information and giving the board since it was kind of a pilot program, this is the first year we've had the information. We wanted the board and the public to be able to see what the information is and then not necessarily make any decisions without giving opportunity to the public for some further input and giving the board an opportunity for some more thoughts. But I'm just curious if it has come to your attention, based upon the users of the meters, have there been any comments or complaints in terms of the meter schedules that have come to your attention?
Is it in the 8 AM to 6 PM, or is it in the hours of use?
Either way.
The hours of use, there was only questions initially when the product was first put out. Is it on, is it off? You do have to read it. It's got quite a bit of information on there. As for the time spacing, no, there were no questions on that, other than the sides that were taken on how much time they would like and how much other time other folks would like. Not so much a complaint, but more of a question on how much time. And it was especially problematic when we had two different times on one side of town and another time period on the other period of, the other portion of town.
Thanks. Same question, Chief?
No, I think people have adapted to them. I mean, smart meters seem like everywhere now because the technology has changed. One thing I did want to bring to the board's attention, one thing that we saw more of in Woods Hole this year was a 3-hour parking where people go into the island. And if you think about it, it's probably the cheapest parking you can get in the town of Falmouth, because you can pay for your meter, your 3-hour parking, and then get a $10 ticket after that. So you get $13 to park. And that's from my parking enforcement person. In fact, I will even share with you one day, for whatever reason, a credit card got stuck in the meter. And they tried to get it out, and the young lady said she couldn't wait, and she ran to the boat and got on the boat. We got her credit card out and held it at the police station for her. But we saw an uptick in that by having the 3-hour parking that we hadn't seen in Woods Hole before.
Doug?
And it could also be attributed to a smart meter as opposed to having $2 in quarters. I mean, we don't know whether it's, both things happened at the same time, that we had a 3-hour meter and we had a different way of paying for it.
Yeah, just like I said, I'm not saying people didn't park before and go to the island. I'm just saying we just saw an increase in it because the meter person that's down there just happened to notice a lot of times people were doing that. So I'm just bringing that to the board's attention.
Could we tow cars from 2 to 6 down there?
As long as they're in a parking lot, they'll get a ticket, and that's what we've done. I have no idea where they went. We're not following them to the boat, but I'm just saying we saw an uptick in it. I mean, when they, especially that one young lady who ran to catch the boat, but I know there were other occasions that our parking enforcement individuals spoke of over the course of the year.
What do you think our revenue would be in Woods Hole if we allowed the first 30 minutes free and then have the meters run after that? Do you think that would help our revenue at all?
It would increase from better than the 2 or 3 hour free parking, yes.
It certainly seems like that's what most of the winter Woods Hole crowd is doing, is heading down, grabbing a newspaper, grabbing a pastry, and going to the post office.
By looking at the times, yes. Some of the other issues that came up last year with the 3-hour parking, where there were people who used the street for 3 hours, absolutely, but they were HUI and MBL people, and then they came out and moved their vehicle to the other side of the street. Those people were given tickets because they were already on the street for 3 hours.
Thank you. Is there anyone here in the audience who would like to speak on this issue? Even though we're not having a decision tonight, you're here, I want to give you an opportunity. Mr. Dufresne?
Adrian Dufresne, resident of Precinct 2, lived in Falmouth Heights since 1953. The parking meters in Falmouth Heights originally were placed there to service the businesses at the casino, which had a movie theater, a gift shop, a barber shop, a beauty salon, and I'll call it a geek-dog stand. It was a place where you went in and there was cart. I worked there, one of my second jobs, 50 cents an hour, all right? So the parking meters had a purpose. They were not for revenue. It was for traffic control, all right, in the summertime, so that these businesses could earn a living. The British Beer was owned by a couple called the Torlease family. The son was the bartender. The mother was the husband was the cook, and it was a family-run business. They gave up their parking, British Beer gave up their parking when they took the rooms that they had and converted them to motels. And the town said, well, you have to have 1.5 parking spaces. So right now, both of those businesses, all those businesses are gone. British Beer is under a special permit. The casino has its own private parking lot. The parking meters that I detest in the wintertime, it's the only park in the town of Falmouth that has parking meters. Now, my kids are all grown up. One of them was in here tonight, all right? And we used to go to the ballpark, to sledding, baseball. My son played ball. There were no meters there. We used to take them out right after Labor Day. Now, last year we conceded, or at least my concession, was let them go till Columbus weekend, again, to provide a parking necessity, even though we've turned in another park into a parking lot. That's the beach parking lot. So the history of parking meters on a ballpark had a purpose years ago, because the meters themselves are on a park. The park begins, the road laid out, I think, is 60 feet. I'm not quite sure on that. And the meters themselves and the cars park for the purposes of people wanting to go to the ballpark. And years ago, to satisfy the businesses to have a place for fast service, barber shop, beauty salon, gift shop. So the history of parking meters, when we start talking about revenue and smart meters, the smart thing is let's take them the hell out of there. Let's convert the park back to a park. Let's allow the young families of the town that love to go to the Heights, or the people that like to park there and take a walk over the bluff because it's one of the most gorgeous scenes in the town of Falmouth. Why should those piece of park land have parking meters? Financially, it doesn't justify. Take the smart meters out, put the old ones back on, take them out after Labor Day, and let's let Falmouth become the residential area that it's been since I moved there in 1953. And as long as I live, I'm going to fight for the residential status of Falmouth Heights. And I'll come here every year and squawk if those meters stay in effect all winter, because money should not be what we're talking about. We should be talking about the convenience for the Falmouth citizens that like to go to Falmouth Heights. And I've seen them park there, walk over the bluff, enjoy the view, right? I've seen the fathers go over there with their kids to play ball, sliding down the hill in the wintertime. Do we want people to have to put money in the meter? Give me a break. What the hell are we doing to the town of Falmouth?
Thank you.
I'm asking you. I just can't understand. And the chief, the meters come under the Board of Selectmen. They don't come under the fire chief, the police chief. I love my chief of police, and I think he does a hell of a job. But don't make money the objective of Falmouth Heights parking meters.
Thank you, Ms. Bumpus.
Catherine Bumpus. I'm co-president of the Woods Hole Community Association, and actually, one of the things that prompted this conversation this year was a conversation with Andy, but also a parent who I know in Woods Hole who said, oh yeah, it's really handy that the meters take credit cards now, because when we go to the ballpark and play at the Heights, and his son has soccer practice there, he can pay his meter in the off-season with his credit card. And that seems a little wrong when you're going to the park. I'll agree with Andy on that one. In Woods Hole, we'd love to be completely residential, but we're a commuter parking lot a lot of the time, and that's frustrating. We appreciate the parking turnover that we get with the meters. This year, I did hear that there were people who were paying the 3 hours, getting a $10 ticket, and just paying them on a regular basis. And that was a cheap place to park for them. I think maybe something in the fee hearing in the spring you could consider is towing after 5 tickets were issued in a week, 4 tickets were issued in a week, something like that. Maybe there's some other enforcement that could happen after that. 2 years ago, when we came to ask for the meters to be free in the winter, it was that incredibly snowy winter, and it made everybody really much happier. Having the meters free is sort of a relaxation of what it's like in the crazy summer season. So winter is pleasanter in the village, and that's something that's really pretty easy to do. I understand the meters cost money now because they have to be serviced, and they have their blinky lights. If you want complaints about what these meters do, they blink all the time. That's something that people don't like about them. We do need some enforcement for turnover, or every parking space in Woods Hole will be filled with people going to the vineyard on a daily basis. So we need some balance there, but having them free for a period of time is very helpful, and the village appreciates it a lot. So I hope you consider it again for this year.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Can I ask a question of the chief from the meter report?
Please, Chief.
I assume that the average stay period in the hours is just during the 8 to 6 time. It's not outside the hours of when the meters are
functional.
Well, I mean, they're always functional, but
They're always functional, but they that's correct, right?
To take an occupancy over the 24-hour period, but go through the average.
Yeah, it's through the average of the 24-hour.
So this is the average over the 24-hour period or during the 10-hour period?
That average is through the 24-hour period.
Okay, so then it's not very good data then. If we're talking about over the 24-hour period, when I imagine most of these spots are empty from 2 to 4, 2 to 6.
They can actually be parked in.
Right, they're actually not legal to be parked there. So to use these numbers over 24 hours when we really should be concerned only about 12 hours, these numbers actually are very scary, saying if we're averaging 1.7 and 1.4 over the 24-hour period, we're really close to that 3-hour period that you're talking about. I wasn't expecting that answer. The question I really had is, in the Heights, in March and April, we had 2.4 and 2.1 hours as our average stay period. Very bizarrely out of whack with everything else, where it was, everywhere else it's 0.7. Any idea why in March and April cars were staying for that long a period of time?
Was there a fair or something going on, maybe?
Just because of maybe the BBC and things like that. I have no idea what was going on in March and April.
St. Patrick's?
Well, it's, yeah, I mean,
Well, is there any way we could get these smart meters to tell us the...
Could because maybe there was some sporting events going on. I don't know. Soccer, spring soccer. It was just an uptick in March and April.
Is there any way we could get that data for 10 hours a day as opposed to 24? I think that's the
I can say she's my
8 to 6.
I can put it in paper, but my examination wasn't about.
We can get it for you, but according to the lieutenant, when he reviewed the computer itself, it's about the same data for those hours. Because if it's not filling up, there's nothing. I'll let him explain so I don't. He's the one that reviews it.
Okay.
As I look over the data today, because I also called the company to try to get a minimum or maximum, because I knew that would be a question. Unfortunately, they were not able to give me the answer today, but I will continue to seek that out, because it appears that is a hot topic. How long did they really stay there? I don't have a number of that. Obviously, it comes through the average, but I quickly reviewed it in preparation for today, and there's not many folks sitting there over time. Obviously, the meter, it's an illegal park if it's there from 2 to 4, so that's not counting. But the rest of the time, I skimmed through it, and it is about the same time. And the percentages are greatly lowered, the occupancy percentage. Because the vehicle sensor watches the parking space. It looks for a car. Paid or unpaid, it looks for a car.
So what is it, so from 4 to 8, and I'm down in Woods Hole during that time of the day, there are not many spaces taken.
Correct.
But the meter's reading that as an empty space.
It's reading it as an empty space.
For 4 hours.
Yes,
And you're
sir.
saying from 2 to 4 does, so we're only talking about a 22-hour period. So for 4 hours, it's already empty.
But it doesn't count it, I think what you're saying is it doesn't count it towards the average. It doesn't. It counts the occupancy. That's how it logs into the data report. So the occupancy and the average stay match.
An occupant does not, okay.
No, it doesn't
Okay.
extend to a 24-hour period, thereby, explanatory, it's all extended across. It wouldn't extend that way.
Okay.
It only looks at that occupancy and then matches it. You could have a paid column also, but I only looked at the side that for occupancy, it seems fair enough.
So if one car is sitting in a spot for 2 hours, and that's the only thing that happens to that spot, the
Right.
meter would say that was a 2-hour average.
For that spot, yes,
Yeah,
sir.
Right, okay. So it doesn't really actually record empty as an average, okay. All right, that makes more sense to me now. Thank you.
Any other questions, Doug?
It just seems like the problem is more of people that, in Woods Hole, are just taking advantage of taking the ticket. So maybe we do need to think of some sort of towing policy.
Or raise the
raise the fines from $10 to a higher fine. I mean, if you've ever gotten a parking ticket in Boston or other places, and I'm glad you brought that up, that, I'm not the only one hearing it, and we're not the only one seeing it. It's become a parking lot, because for $13, that's pretty cheap parking for the day.
Ms. Bumpus, did you want to come to the podium?
We did have a higher fee for a parking ticket, and there was discussion about having the first ticket be a $10 ticket and the second ticket be a higher ticket, because when the parking tickets went up 5 years ago, a period of time ago, that seems very recently, but I don't remember how long ago it was, the merchants felt that it was maybe a $20 ticket for the first ticket was excessive, and was tough on people who were return visitors once a year, and they were getting the $20 ticket. And so it's a back and forth balance, and whether or not there's an escalating fee for parking tickets is something maybe we should look at.
Well, right now it's 10 and
again.
20.
It's 10 and then 20 for the second,
No, that was done away with by the board, because there were complaints from people in Woods Hole they didn't like the second ticket for $20. That was back in 2008, 2009.
It's still in our current book right now.
Well, it has not been enforced by the police department since 2008. In fact, it wasn't even on our tickets. It was removed from our tickets when we printed the new tickets.
It's what's posted in our fees, so it actually was within our right to be able to instruct that we enforce it the way, I was hoping we could change the fee tonight, but it's not one of our advertised fees that we're considering. But since it's actually in one of our fees that we currently have, we could instruct that it be actually enforced, that the first violation is $10 and any subsequent one is $20.
My preference would be that we look at it, give a little time for discussion and make a more comprehensive plan, although that might be a piece of it. Anyone else?
I don't know, I don't think $20 is even gonna deter them if they're gonna go. What's the parking at the Steamship Authority parking lot? We should find out what that is and get closer to that.
I think it's like $25 a day or something, but I'm not sure of that.
Thank you.
Mr. Dufresne.
It's 10 o'clock. Sure. Mr. Dufresne, the last speaker on this issue?
I would only ask the Board of Selectmen to justify the only park in the town of Falmouth that has parking meters. And the families that live in the town of Falmouth are all welcome to come up there and see the view. We welcome everybody. Why would we charge them if it's not necessary? take the smart meters out, take the pocket meters out if you want. There's a parking lot owned by the casino that he never uses. We've converted another piece of park property into a public park. So it bothers me when I see families playing ball and have to pay in the meter. It's ridiculous.
Thank you. Last comment was Mr. Dufresne, Mr. Bumpus. 10 seconds, and then we've got to move.
Okay, and I should have been clear in my request on this. Is there any chance that you could make the meters free for the 2nd of December, which is Renaissance Fair Day in Woods Hole, which is a busy day? And I had asked that you consider making the meters start with December 1st as the start date for the meters being free in this discussion. So if you're not going to make a decision on it tonight, is there any chance we could have that for just the 2nd, and you can talk about whether or not you'll be suspending the meters for a longer period of time when you have whatever more information you want?
Mr. Suso, are we allowed without notice to make a meter suspension for a one-day pending?
It's not on your agenda. I defer to the discretion of the board.
Well,
Whatever you determine to be
it's certainly
appropriate.
discussion of the Woods Hole and Falmouth Heights parking meters. I mean, it's the topic, it's not like we're taking up a topic that is not posted as being an issue that we're discussing.
I'd like to hear from the chief on that as well.
We have in the past, for different events, I have suspended parking in certain areas down there. So I can suspend it that day for, for a period of time, if there's a time. And we will enforce, handicap and other violations that we have down there, so.
That's terrific. Ms. Bumpus, would you advise the chief the time, and the board is off the hook? Thank you, chief.
You're welcome.
Great. Okay, next we have approved 2018 annual license renewals. Mr. Jones, do you want to start? You're so good at this.
Well, I actually want to make a motion on the Heights parking meters. We've done it for years and years, and I would like to move that we actually suspend them from now until May.
I'll second.
The problem is we only have discussion, not discussion and vote, and we also did tell the chief we were going to have a discussion. He's now gone. So I'd like us to wait for the next meeting for that one.
It's December 4th?
Right.
I don't think that's going to be an issue because of Thanksgiving holiday. There probably aren't going to be any recreation council games and such. So, what do you think?
Well, there's been a motion and a second. The only discussion I would have is that I think I'm in favor of more of a comprehensive plan if we can get to it. And I suppose what we could do is have the vote and then still keep, have it on the agenda again.
I guess where I'm also still a little confused is I thought we actually had this vote last year, that we were setting this, at the Heights at least, that we were setting it forward as a regular thing, not that we were going to.
I thought so, too.
Revisit every year, and I was surprised that they were still running, and I thought we had voted that it was going to be a Columbus Day to Memorial Day. They were not in operation.
Can we see, is the chief still here? I don't want this discussion that he stayed till 10 o'clock at night to hear to go on without him.
I hear somebody in the hall.
That might help us here.
And I just I wish I had checked the minutes to see what we had voted, because I thought we had said, we're not going to do this discussion every year. And we're not going to make Mr. Dufresne come back and request it every year. I thought we had decided.
Thank you, Chief. I wonder if you'd come to the podium, and Mr. Jones had a question with respect to the Heights only.
And my memory must be failing me, because I thought last year we had voted that we were going to do this as a regular policy of discontinuing the meters in the Heights from Columbus Day to Memorial Day.
I I don't remember it as being a policy.
Okay.
And there's been a motion and a second for, with respect to the heights only, that they be suspended, but I didn't hear a particular date, but my comment to that in discussion was that I was looking forward to more input so that we can make a more comprehensive policy and not have things be broken up or different from one place to another, but the board hasn't voted. I don't know if you wanted to.
The reason I feel very differently about the heights is Mr. Frain's point. It is a ballpark. It is used, and a lot of the times that the people there are going to be putting the meters in. The BBC, I'm not as worried about because that's 6 o'clock at night. The meters don't work. And they're not operating them, and
They've got the other parking lot too.
Right.
And the Island Queen is shut down.
Right.
I mean, in terms of somebody abusing it because they're going to the vineyard.
Oh.
If you're going to suspend them, I would request that you not suspend them for such a long period of time, because you just saw with the fees, I mean, I understand, they are there to make revenue. It's a meter, it's what it makes. It's what towns make across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. They have to support themselves.
And what I was thinking actually ahead of time before the meeting was, I kind of wanted to have them suspended for soccer season and suspend them for baseball season and snowy days. And snowy days, it may just be we don't put that on the list, but that when the families are going there for the recreational leagues or going sledding.
And just so you know, Mr. Jones, we work with the recreational department. When they have those large soccer tournaments up there, they notify us. And the enforcement that we take up there are enforcement that would affect public safety.
Okay.
Because there are people parked everywhere during those tournaments, anybody that's had kids. And we work with them.
Mr. Suso?
Madam Chair, earlier, I think it was Selectman Jones had suggested, and I just offered again as a compromise, these meters are quite adept at giving free time. Why not the first 30 minutes free? All people who want to take a stroll or stop in the park or view the sights can have the first 30 minutes of any meter free without having to talk about taking meters down or bagging meters or eliminating meters. And I think would accommodate much of the demand by the public. Wouldn't have to be 30 minutes, could be more or less, I suppose.
The thing I like about that is it might, because I'm looking for something that's comprehensive for the police to be able to enforce a little bit and the public to learn a little easier. And it was expressed by Ms. Bumpus that might be something that should be considered for Woods Hole as well.
And then you have consistency through the town, too. That's one of the pieces that we need to do, too. Because
And I guess
if
the
I go
plus
to
and
Woods
minus
Hole,
of the heights is, someone going there for the soccer, at least they get the first 30 minutes free. They're only going to be there typically for the youth games are an hour and a half. It is not a bad compromise to get towards, and then we get more information. And we try that this year, see what happens. I would love to change my motion to that I know you'd rather wait for 2 weeks, but I would like to.
Well, there's a motion before the board now if you want to amend it.
I would amend it to have both the Woods Hole and the Heights ones be free for the first 30 minutes and then operational after that.
I'll second that. I changed my, agree to that.
all meters? Again, I just want to clarify, because in the past, we've only done 29 meters in Woods Hole. Just whatever the board wants.
I had meant it to be the Heights meters and the meters in the past in Woods Hole that we've adjusted.
The 29 meters.
Okay. For 30 minutes free.
Yep.
Okay.
And I guess what I'd leave open is to what date, because we've already talked about this tonight, but we don't have to decide when that's going to stop tonight.
The request in Woods Hole was always till April 1st? Yeah, it was the 1st of April, usually, because I think that was a request of the business community down there. So it's a matter of when you want to start.
Want to look at December 1st through the end of March?
Is that your motion, Mr. Jones?
Sure. We'll say December 1st to the end of March.
Is that your second?
Yes, that's my second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
One last question for you. What's the conclusion?
Half an hour free.
Will we revisit this again?
Probably not this season.
Okay. What? For next year?
Yes.
Perhaps your consideration for removing the meters on the only park in the town of Falmouth.
Thank you. Okay, on to approve 2018 annual license renewals.
I would move approval of the all alcohol restaurants at Anejo Mexican Bistro, Captain Kidd Restaurant, Casino FX, Flying Bridge Restaurant, 4170, Golden Seals Restaurant, Hong Kong Restaurant, 99 Restaurant and Pub, Osteria La Civetta, Paul's Pizza and Seafood, Pickle Jar Kitchen, Quahog Republic Dive Bar, Quarter Duck Restaurant, Quick's Hole Tavern, the Golf Club, and the Water Street Kitchen.
All those in favor? Oh, second, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye. And for all alcohol club, Cape Cod Curling Club, and Falmouth Rod and Gun Club.
All those, second, and then
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
I'll get it in there.
That's all right.
For all alcohol inn holder, Coonamessett Inn, all alcohol package store, Falmouth Food Mart and Liquor, Falmouth Wine and Spirits, Cappy's, Kenyon's Market, North Falmouth Liquors, RG's Variety and Liquors, Old Barn Package Store, and T-Ticket Market.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Wine and Malt Club, St. Anthony's Club of Falmouth, Wine and Malt Restaurant, Crab Apples, Falmouth Cinema Pub, Home Fort Sushi and Kitchen, Ryan Family Amusement, Seafood Sam's, and Steve's Pizzeria.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Wine and Malt and Cordials Restaurant, Dogs and Hogs, Wine and Malt Package Store, Holly Park Variety, Intergas Service Center, Inner Harbor Market, Jack and the Beanstalk, Rapid Refill, and Wild Harbor General Store.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Just to point out that these, the alcohol licenses are not seasonal ones, and the seasonal ones we do a little bit later, at which point, because in case the Boathouse Bar had come up, I would have probably been holding that one.
Absolutely. Do you want to keep going, or do you
Yep.
want to break?
I'm
Okay,
fine.
go for it.
Common victual license, Anejo Mexican Bistro, Captain Kidd Restaurant, Casino FX, Coonamessett Inn, Crab Apples, Dogs and Hogs, Falmouth Cinema Pub, Falmouth Percy's Place, Flying Bridge Restaurant, 4170, Golden Sails Restaurant, Homeport Sushi and Kitchen, Hong Kong Restaurant, Mary Ellen's Portuguese Bakery, 99 Restaurant and Pub, Osteria La Civetta, Paul's Pizza and Seafood, Falmouth Percy's, I already had that one. Pickle Jar Kitchen, Quahog Republic Dive Bar, Quarter Deck Restaurant, Quick's Hole Tavern, Ryan Family Amusement, Seafood Sam's, Steve's Pizzeria, the Golf Club, and Water Street Kitchen.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Inn holder license, Coonamessett Inn, Palmer House.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Entertainment, Captain Kidd Restaurant, Casino FX, Coonamessett Inn, Flying Bridge Restaurant, 4170, Quahog Republic Dive Bar, Quarter Deck Restaurant, Quicksall Tavern, St. Anthony's Club of Falmouth, TJC, the Golf Club, Sunday Entertainment, Captain Kidd Restaurant, Coonamessett Inn, 4170, Flying Bridge Restaurant, and TJC, the Golf Club.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The Automatic Amusements, Falmouth Cinema Pub, Ryan Family Amusements, theater license to the Falmouth Cinema Pub, and Class 2 used cars, Braga's Auto Sales and Sandy's Auto Sales.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Wow.
Nice work.
Okay, great. Now we have minutes of meetings. We have the public session for October 14, 2017.
Yes, Madam
Stan?
Chair, there are a number of names that are either listed as unidentified or, in one case, Betsy, and I think we could easily put, instead of question mark, Betsy Gladfelder, who did participate in this. So I'd like to see at least that edit.
Peter, are you able to take note of these edits to forward?
I can provide this copy, my copy.
All right, we'll do it that way. That makes sense.
And I think some of those unidentified comments, or person's comment, were actually comments that you made, Peter. I don't know whether you could fill in your name appropriately where you were responsible for the comments, but, you know, I think those were constructive comments, and we'd love to see you get credit for them. And with those changes, I would move approval and release to public access.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain?
Okay, next we have the minutes of October 16, 2017 public session.
I move approval and release for public access.
Actually, I'm just noting that the October 16 are among the minutes still being finalized.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you
Yeah,
said,
no,
I thought you said October 30th, my apologies.
Nope.
Yep.
So now we'll go to the public session for November 6th.
November 6th.
This is the
Oh,
update of our
okay.
school.
I move approval and release for public access.
That one's public already. We're talking about the public session.
On Monday?
November 6th public session.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't need to release it, it's already released.
Okay.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I just want to be sure you weren't talking about executive. Okay, now we have the executive session for, let's see.
November 6th.
November 6th, right, thank you.
I move approval not to release.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then I think there might also be October 30 public session.
Yeah, that's the one I thought you were.
Yeah, sorry, I might have skipped over that.
I move approval with release.
Is there a second?
Second. Sorry.
And that's public session minutes?
Right.
The public session.
Right.
Correct.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yep. Next, we have individual selectmen's reports. Doug?
It was a great week.
I know, who remembers? Sam?
Oh, just a couple of highlights. I did attend the Woods Hole Historic District Study meeting on the 9th, led by the Cape Cod Commission, Sarah Kirchhoff. I thought it was an excellent activity, and I've heard comments from Woods Hole residents who attended and thought it was a very constructive first start of brainstorming, and they kind of hit on three areas: character of the village, transportation issues, and historic preservation. Also went to the Selectmen Counselors Association meeting on the 10th, I guess, and that's where a Department of Transportation Undersecretary spoke to the group. Quite interesting. And then the Veterans Day celebration, I think, is notable. Again, an excellent community outpouring of attendance. Andy Dufresne and Ahmed Mustafa did a great job in being the masters of ceremonies. And I thought
That speaker was outstanding, too.
Carissa
Yeah.
April, excuse me, is her name. Yeah, I thought she really did an excellent job, too. Very thoughtful reflections on her service in the military and those of her compatriots as well, so. And then I just mentioned that I went Saturday to the Sea Scout Chip Nopska 75th anniversary celebration, and also Al Beal's 30-year retirement party. And that was very well attended. David Vieira was there, Dylan Fernandez, and it was an excellent reminiscence for about a 2-hour period, a lot of talk and a lot of remembering, and attended by Scout leaders. Actually, they had a representative from the National Sea Scout there, as well as the regional, and then also, of course, the local council was there. So it was really a nice occasion, and a good opportunity to really thank all of the Scout leaders in the town that help support these programs and help grow these young people into people of character and community leaders. So,
And the Sea Scouts were also at the breakfast at the Flying Bridge for Veterans Day, which was really a great tribute, and Jay Zavala was the MC, and several business people put that together and pay for it, and it's just a great thing for vets to be able to relax and celebrate and reminisce. Doug?
I'm just happy to join at least the beginning of the Veterans Celebration. I brought my father down. He just had a great time marching down the street, and then got cold very quickly and we had to go home. But it certainly was amazing, the turnout at that event.
Yeah, every year.
Mr. Suso?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. My compliments on getting through a daunting agenda fairly expeditiously. Well done. I just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Same here.
Short and sweet. Peter?
All set.
All set. Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a nice Thanksgiving, everyone.
Welcome to the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce. The Falmouth Chamber is dedicated to working on behalf of our members to make Falmouth a better place to live, work, and conduct business. We are committed to developing the economic, cultural, educational, and civic interests of our community and welcome the support from all organizations to achieve our combined goals. Whether you call Falmouth home, are a summer resident, or a visitor, we hope you take advantage of all that the Chamber has to offer.
Hosting services for fctv.org are provided by MegaNet Communications. MegaNet offers a wide array of internet services including Mega Backup Cloud Service, server co-location, T1, fiber, Metro Ethernet, as well as telephone services such as hosted PBX and digital voice. Their #1 goal is to keep your communications network up and running and allow you to focus on growing your business. 877-634-2638 or meganet.net.